Chapter 1437. Boss, you can even come up with an answer to this kind of question. That's amazing. Yuan Xiaoman, who was originally very confused, was even more impressed after hearing Mo Yinjue's explanation. This was too amazing. It turned out that the question that the owner of the ruins was facing was simply unsolvable. Then, why are some of the other cultivators able to enter and some unable to? Dongfang Yu frowned. This point seemed to be somewhat inexplicable. Everything depends on the cultivator's own beliefs. If they doubt themselves too much, then they won't be able to enter. Once he said this, Gong Xiaoqing and the others all understood. All their questions were answered at this moment. Let's go in as well. Mo Yinjue's gaze fell upon the mirror. Many cultivators had already entered. If they continued to delay, then there would be nothing left. Everyone nodded and immediately walked towards the mirror that they had each chosen. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked towards the stairway to heaven. However, when she entered the range of the stairway to heaven, her delicate and perfect face could not help but reveal a trace of amazement. This was because from the moment she entered the range of the stairway to heaven, a dense wave of elemental energy had surrounded her. If this wave of elemental energy was more powerful than the elemental energy in the small dimension, then it was about 3 times stronger than normal elemental energy. Originally, she still had some injuries in her body, but now that she was in such a rich elemental energy environment, she felt exceptionally comfortable. The demon summoning scripture had already begun to circulate on its own, absorbing the surrounding elemental energy. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked upwards, and the cultivators above her continued to walk upwards. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang took the second step on the stairway to heaven, she felt a wave of pressure pressing down on her body, making it difficult for her to advance. Seeing this, a trace of suspicion appeared in her ink-black phoenix eyes. She never thought that the stairway to heaven would have such a mysterious problem. It had truly exceeded her expectations. Bailey Hongzhuang looked upwards and discovered that many cultivators were already drenched in sweat. It was extremely difficult for them to even take a step forward. The owner of this ruin is indeed an incredible existence. Just this stairway to heaven alone is already incredible. Bailey Hongzhuang was full of admiration for the owner of the ruins. She had never seen such a stairway before, but she did not know what this stairway was testing. The 100th step didn't seem very high, but from everyone's expression, it was obvious that it was extremely difficult to climb up the 100th step. It was likely that only cultivators who had reached the last step of the celestial stairway would be able to obtain the final inheritance of the master of the ruins. She had seen ancient ruins before, but it was clear that this ancient ruin had given her the deepest shock. Every test of the master of the ruins was extremely special. If one did not have enough comprehension ability, they would not be able to obtain the good treasures inside. Moreover, this ruin didn't have a lot of treasures like other ruins, but each treasure here was very rare. Just this point alone proved that the master of the ruins had high standards and expectations. Everything he left behind was extraordinary. Not only that, but the layout of the ruins also gave people an indescribable feeling of beauty and enjoyment. Master, the stairway to heaven should be more difficult the further you go. It won't be easy to reach the top. Chapter 1438. I'm afraid that the further we go, the greater the pressure will be. It will be extremely difficult to obtain the final inheritance. Xiao Bai sized up the cultivators who were walking at the top. Based on the difficult expressions on the cultivators' faces, she could tell that they were under a lot of pressure. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded, but her expression didn't change because of this. The inheritance of the owner of the ruin is not simple. Whoever can reach the end will have to depend on their own abilities. In comparison, the owner of the ruin had never set a dangerous test for them since the beginning. The final test also depended on their own abilities. If they were not powerful enough, it would be their own problem. Xiao He and Xiao Bai saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was full of fighting spirit, and a look of admiration appeared in their eyes. No matter when or where, their master was always full of fighting spirit. She would never be frightened by the difficulties in front of her. That was what they admired the most. As a cultivator, the most important quality was not to admit defeat easily. Bailey Hongzhuang did not stay any longer and immediately continued to walk up. Every time she climbed a step, the pressure would increase a little. However, the increase was not huge, and it was completely within the cultivator's range of tolerance. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked up one step after another. Her speed was not slow at all. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang reached the 21st step, she suddenly realized that the pressure on the 21st step had increased abruptly. It was much more than the pressure on the first 20 steps. Under such pressure, her body could not help but sink a little. Upon seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang sized up the situation on the stairway again. Only then did she realize that many cultivators had stopped at the same level. After taking a closer look, Bailey Hongzhuang quickly discovered the problem. Most cultivators had stopped at the 20th, 40th, and even 60th steps. It seems that the pressure increases every 20 steps, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. It was easy to determine the situation from the crowd situation. The increase every 20 steps meant that it would be harder to climb towards the end. The difficulty of reaching the final level was probably extremely shocking. So far, the highest person had reached was the 60th floor. Most of the cultivators were still around the 40th floor. This did not mean that they could not withstand such pressure, but under such pressure, the consumption of their physical strength was extremely shocking. Walking from the first floor to the 40th floor, any cultivator who was not physically strong enough would need to rest. Master, the concentration of elemental energy here has also increased. Xiao Hei's eyes shone brightly. Previously, the 3 times the density of the origin energy was already very shocking. She did not expect that the density of the origin energy would actually reach 4 times the density. This was simply too shocking. Upon hearing Xiao Hei's words, Bailey Hongzhuang finally reacted. Previously, she had focused all her attention on the sudden increase in pressure and did not notice that the density of the elemental energy had increased once again. Could it be that the density of the elemental energy would double after every 20 steps? Bailey Hongzhuang became more and more surprised. If that was really the case, then the situation was too shocking. If that's the case, wouldn't the density of the origin energy at the place where the coffin is at be 7 to 8 times the density? When Xiao Hei said this, he felt that there was a problem with his judgment. Chapter 1439. Not only Xiao Hei, but Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao Bai also felt that this possibility was too small. 8 times the density of spirit energy, they had never seen it anywhere. It was too amazing. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to move forward, a familiar voice came from behind. "Boss!" Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang turned around and saw Xia Jiqing's figure. Not only Xia Jiqing, but Mo Yinjue and the others also came in almost at the same time. Seeing that everyone had come in, Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face was also filled with a happy smile. "You are all here." Xia Jiqing nodded slightly and gave a thumbs up to Bailey Hongzhuang. "Boss, you are still the best. Come up quickly." Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. At the same time, Mo Yinjue and the others' eyes also stayed on the white staircase, their faces were filled with shock. In fact, no matter who saw such a staircase, they could not help but be shocked because this was an amazing masterpiece. Han Zimo and Dong Hongfei, who were on the staircase, saw that the entire team of cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty had come in, and their faces could not help but show surprise. Even in their team, only half of the cultivators had managed to make it in. After all, there was a certain probability of this kind of luck, and not everyone's luck could be so good. Under such circumstances, all the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty could come in, which proved that there was a difference. Han Zimo and Dong Hongfei thought of the sentence, "Boss, you are great." Xia Jiqing said before. Could it be that Bailey Hongzhuang found a way to enter? Although they felt that this possibility was too small, with Bailey Hongzhuang's identity as the young lord of the Tiangang sect, everything seemed not impossible. Anyone who could have such a status must have some skills that others could not have. Previously, Bailey Hongzhuang's battle prowess was already very shocking. Now, it seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang's perception was definitely not simple. They had already experienced the difficulties of this mirror before. Not to mention that it was different, the two mirrors looked exactly the same. They even paid attention to every curve of the pattern, but the final result was exactly the same. There was no difference. The most important thing was that if this was really the difference that Bailey Hongzhuang had found, it meant that Bailey Hongzhuang had not only found the difference in one mirror, she had also found the difference in several other mirrors. How was this possible? Pan Zimo and Dong Hongyun looked at each other. This was too unbelievable. Under such circumstances, they even forgot about their daily grudges. This was a truly powerful figure. After a short shock, Xia Jiqing and the others began to walk up. After feeling the pressure on their bodies, Mo Yinjue and the others had a strange look on their faces. However, they quickly recovered from their astonishment and continued to head upwards. Bailey Hongzhuang did not continue to move forward after seeing Xia Jiqing and the others coming up. According to her judgment, it was impossible for other cultivators to reach the top of the staircase today. Therefore, they did not need to be too anxious now. Chapter 1440. Xia Jiqing was the first to walk to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. However, when she walked up to the 21st step, she found that the pressure suddenly increased. Even the hand that was originally stretched out to Bailey Hongzhuang seemed to be moving down a little. Why did the pressure suddenly increase so much? Xia Jiqing's face was full of surprise. Under this pressure, she only felt that her body was a lot slower and she was faintly uncomfortable. As Xia Jiqing's voice came out, Gong Shaoqing and the others were also a little mentally prepared, so when they walked up, their bodies did not suddenly press down. According to my judgment, the pressure on the heaven stairway should increase with every 20 steps. I'm afraid it will be very difficult to reach the top. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but look at the top of the heaven stairway. Originally, when they stood at the bottom of the heaven stairway, they only felt that the 100 steps would not be too difficult for them and that they could walk up with some time. Now it seemed that all of this was not so simple. It would take a lot of time to walk up. Is it possible that there is only one person who can walk up to the 100th step of the heaven stairway? Yuan Xiaoman bent her head to look at the heaven stairway above and asked the doubts in her heart. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. I don't know. We can only try our best to go higher. The power of this layer is richer than the power of the lower 20 steps. If we can go higher, the power will be richer. Even if we cultivate there for a while, it will be of great benefit to us. With the voice of Bailey Hongzhuang falling, Xia Jiqing and the others recovered. They also did not notice this point. The power here is about 3 times richer than the outside world. Gong Shaoqing's eyes were full of amazement. With such a rich power, if they could cultivate here for a while, they should be able to break through soon. Then let's go up quickly. Bai Junyu said with a smile. They did not expect the last inheritance left by the master of the monument to be so domineering. This heaven stairway was an extraordinary existence. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes fell on Mo Yinjue's body, revealing a bit of worry and concern. Mo Yinjue, your injury is very serious. This pressure will damage your injury to a certain extent. In my opinion, you might as well find a place where you can withstand the pressure and sit down to cultivate your body. Under such a rich power, your injury recovery will also speed up a bit. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Mo Yinjue nodded slightly and said, I understand. Seeing that Mo Yinjue listened to her words, Bailey Hongzhuang was also relieved. With Mo Yinjue's injuries, it was impossible to recover without half a month's time. As long as they were able to cultivate here, they would be able to cultivate for a few days. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others continued to move forward. As the pressure gradually increased, the energy in everyone's body was squeezed out. The foreheads of the cultivators were covered with sweat. It was obvious that it was very difficult for them to walk. Above them, some of the cultivators had already stopped and started to rest. Some of them cultivated for a period of time before continuing to ascend. Chapter 1441. The wound on Mo Yinjue's back had begun to bleed, and a faint smell of blood filled the air. Bailey Hongzhuang's nose had always been sensitive. After detecting the smell of blood, she immediately looked at Mo Yinjue's back and said, "Mo Yinjue, your wound has split open." As soon as these words came out, Xia Jiqing and the others also looked at Mo Yinjue with concern. "Mo Yinjue, you should rest here. Mo Yinjue, wait until your injury recovers before you go up. No matter what, your own body is the most important." Everyone looked at Mo Yinjue with concern. As a teammate, Mo Yinjue had long been a part of their team. Although the inheritance was precious, if one's life was gone, then what was the point of it? Mo Yinjue glanced at everyone, then nodded and said, "I'll rest here, you can continue up." Seeing that Mo Yinjue had chosen to have a good rest, everyone was relieved. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze still fell on Mo Yinjue's back and said, "If you can't bear the pressure on this floor, then cultivate on the next floor. Don't worry." Mo Yinjue nodded slightly and said, "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. The reason why the wound split open is because of the sudden increase in pressure. After I get used to the pressure on this floor, I'll be fine. The heavenly energy here is richer, and my wound will recover faster if I cultivate here. Then be careful," Bailey Hongzhuang said. Immediately afterward, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others continued to walk forward. However, as everyone gradually went up, everyone also felt a burst of exhaustion. Walking under such pressure was too exhausting. When they reached the 50th floor, they already felt that their bodies had no strength and could not continue. Not only the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty, but the cultivators of the other dynasties were also in the same state. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a bright light. Under such pressure, their physique would gradually improve. This situation was just like the weight training to improve the physical strength. Under such weight for a long time, the strength in the body would gradually be stimulated. As a result, this had great benefits for the cultivator. "I can't walk anymore, I want to rest." Xia Jiqing gasped, her face was red, and her body was dripping with sweat. Under such circumstances, every step was extremely difficult. She had already reached her limit by making it this far. Yuan Xiaoman continued to walk up a few more floors before she stopped and sat down on the ground as if she was paralyzed. This kind of pressure was too exhausting, and she felt that her body was about to fall apart. Gong Xiaoqing and the others persisted for more floors, and finally stopped at the 61st floor. The huge pressure completely crushed their will to continue, and after sitting down, they could no longer stand up. Bailey Hongzhuang also stopped at the 61st floor. Her physical strength allowed her to continue moving forward, but because of the internal injuries she suffered before, if she continued to move forward, her injuries would be affected to a certain extent. At present, the density of the spirit energy on this floor was extremely rich. Everything was as she and Xiao He and Xiao Bai had guessed. Every time they reached the 20th floor, the density of the spirit energy would double. Chapter 1442. Once Bailey Hongzhuang had made her decision, she immediately sat down on the spot and began to meditate. The stairway to heaven was extremely wide and could accommodate a cultivator to sit down and meditate. It was as if it had been specially prepared for this purpose. Xiao He and Xiao Bai sat on either side of Bailey Hongzhuang. As their master began to cultivate, the two beasts began to cultivate as well. Their cultivation level was now the same as their master's. Since their master was working so hard in her cultivation, they naturally could not fall behind. This was the only way they could become good helpers to their master in the future. When Gong Xiaoqing and the others saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had begun to cultivate, they also sat down and began to cultivate as well. Pan Zimo and Dong Hongyun continued to ascend. Neither of them was willing to submit to the other, and neither of them was willing to lose to the other in this aspect. Hence, even though the two of them were exhausted, they were still unwilling to give up and forced themselves to continue forward. Finally, when they reached the 79th level, the two of them could not help but stop. They could imagine the pressure on the 80th level. However, based on their current physical condition, if they were to rashly ascend to the 80th level, their bodies would be crushed. Even though they were unwilling to submit to the other party, they could not use their bodies as a wager. Once they reached the 80th level and their bodies were injured, it would be even more difficult for them to surpass the other party. Pan Zimo and Dong Hongyun panted heavily as they sat down on the ground. When they noticed that Bailey Hongzhuang had stopped at the 61st level and Mo Yunjue had stopped at the 41st level, their eyes filled with astonishment. Why have they stopped so early? Pan Zimo furrowed his brows. Based on Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' powers, they should not have stopped so early. They should have been able to continue ascending. Hearing Pan Zimo's mumbling, Dong Hongyun looked at him mockingly and said, Lady Bailey and Mo Yunjue are both injured. In the face of such pressure, rest is the most important thing. Pan Zimo was shocked. Bailey Hongzhuang's previous performance had been extremely normal. He had almost forgotten that Bailey Hongzhuang was still injured. I know, I don't need you to tell me. Pan Zimo glared at Dong Hongyun with dissatisfaction. What he was most dissatisfied with was Dong Hongyun's tone. Idiot. Dong Hongyun glanced at Pan Zimo and immediately turned his gaze away. It was obvious that he did not want to talk to Bailey Hongzhuang anymore. Many cultivators were cultivating as they advanced. However, many cultivators were unable to continue after the 60th level. The more talented and powerful cultivators were stuck at the 80th level. From everyone's performance, it could be seen that after reaching the 80th floor, every floor up was abnormally difficult. It looked like the distance of a single step, but it felt like the distance of an entire world. Many cultivators were unable to advance to the next level after resting for a few days, while some cultivators simply stayed here and cultivated in peace. After all, in this place where origin energy was so abundant, cultivating for a period of time would allow their strength to increase a little more. Such a good cultivation environment was not something that could be found everywhere. No one knew when it would disappear. Therefore, every day that they could make use of was an extra day of cultivation. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw that the cultivators had stopped advancing, she was no longer anxious. Instead, she focused all her attention on healing her injuries. Chapter 1443. 7 days later, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly opened her eyes and exited her closed-door cultivation. Under such rich primary power, her internal injuries had been completely healed. Not only that, the primary power in her body was gradually growing stronger. If she continued to cultivate here, her cultivation base would soon break through to Orange Realm level 6. Gong Xiaoqing and the others had already continued to move forward after they had rested. Only she and Mo Yunjue had been cultivating in the same place and had not moved forward. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to climb up the stairway, suddenly, two familiar figures came into her sight. Master, isn't that Xianyuan Huan and Bailey Haoshuan? Following Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze, Xiao He also noticed the existence of Xianyuan Huan and Bailey Haoshuan. She did not expect to see them here. The two of them are really lucky to be able to enter the last stage of the inheritance. Xiao Bai could not help but chuckle. Needless to say, with Bailey Haoshuan and Xianyuan Huan's aptitude, it was impossible for them to really see through the mirror's assessment and walk in here. However, to be able to guess correctly proved that the two of them were really lucky. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at the two of them indifferently and withdrew her gaze. As a small kingdom, Fengbo country would naturally send cultivators to participate in the assessment competition. Therefore, she did not feel strange about the appearance of Shenyuan Huan and Bailey Haoshuan. On the contrary, this was a very normal thing. All the previous grievances had completely dissipated after she and Mo Yinjue went to Fengbo country together. Now that she saw them again, she did not feel much. In the future, they would not be anxious anymore. Now, they were just strangers. Bailey Haoshuan and Shenyuan Huan also felt Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze. Both of them looked a little embarrassed. However, as Bailey Hongzhuang withdrew her gaze, the two of them were even more disappointed. The more brilliant Bailey Hongzhuang was now, the greater the disappointment in their hearts. Needless to say, Bailey Hongzhuang had no feelings for Shenyuan Huan. Bailey Haoshuan didn't feel anything before, but now that he saw how amazing Bailey Hongzhuang was, he couldn't help but feel regret. If he had a sister like Bailey Hongzhuang, wouldn't his future be limitless? No one in the entire Fengbo country would dare to bully him. Not only that, as long as Bailey Hongzhuang entered the sect, it would be much easier for him to enter the sect in the future. However, he had ruined everything with his own hands. It was impossible for Bailey Hongzhuang to acknowledge him as her brother. Bailey Hongzhuang turned around and continued to climb upwards. Her body was much stronger than ordinary cultivators due to her previous training, so the pressure on the 60th floor was not a problem for her. Under everyone's gaze, Bailey Hongzhuang walked all the way up from the 61st floor and soon reached the 80th floor. Seeing this scene, everyone couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Isn't this Bailey Hongzhuang's speed too fast? The pressure on the 60th floor is not small, but she walked up so easily. It's too shocking. I guessed that Bailey Hongzhuang would not stop at the 61st floor. She was just healing before. Chapter 1444. Over the past few days, almost all the cultivators had pushed their powers to their limits. Every step forward was extremely difficult. Hence, when they saw how Bailey Hongzhuang had managed to climb so many steps in such a short period of time, their feelings could only be described as envy, jealousy, and hatred. When Bailey Hongzhuang reached the 81st step, she finally understood why everyone had stopped at the 81st step. That was because the pressure on the 81st step had increased significantly. Furthermore, the density of the elemental energy had increased by 10 times. She could feel that with every breath she took, the elemental energy would enter her body along with the air and expel the mottled energy from her body. Xiao He and Xiao Bai were dumbfounded. Previously, the density of the elemental energy had only increased by 6 times. Now, it had increased by 10 times. This was simply too shocking. They could only feel that they were bathing in an ocean of elemental energy. Their bodies were completely surrounded by elemental energy and it was an indescribable comfort. Han Zimo and Dong Hongyun greeted Bailey Hongzhuang when they saw that she had arrived. "Miss Bailey, you're here." Even though the two of them looked very calm, it was undeniable that Bailey Hongzhuang's speed had shocked them. In comparison, this stairway of heaven tested the cultivator's cultivation to a certain extent. It also tested the cultivator's physique even more. Even as men, they felt that every step they took was extremely difficult when faced with this kind of pressure. What more a beautiful lady like Bailey Hongzhuang? However, Bailey Hongzhuang's calm demeanor proved that she did not find it difficult to accept this kind of pressure. Han Zimo and Dong Hongyun's admiration for her deepened at the thought of this. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded gently as her pretty face rippled with a smile. "I never thought that the density of the elemental energy on the 80th step would be so high. It's simply amazing." Han Zimo chuckled. It's because the density of the elemental energy is so high that many cultivators have had a breakthrough in the past few days. The smile on the corners of Bailey Hongzhuang's lips widened. Even though she had been in closed-door cultivation, she could feel the cultivators around her breaking through. The stairway to heaven was indeed a good place to cultivate. Pan Zimo and Dong Hongyun were currently standing on the 90th floor. After reaching this floor, they realized that it was extremely difficult to take another step forward. In the span of a day, they had already tried several times, but to no avail. Just the pressure of the 90th level was enough to make them unable to stand up straight. It was as if they were being pressed down by a mountain. Even the circulation of their origin energy had slowed down. Even though the origin energy here was extremely dense, because the circulation speed of the origin energy within their bodies was very slow, they didn't absorb much, and it wasn't as fast as the origin energy they absorbed at the 81st level. There were still a few floors between Bailey Hongzhuang and Pan Zimo. Gong Shaoqing and the rest also stopped at the 80th floor. It was only after reaching this place that the difficulty began to show. Only those who were orange level and above could reach the 80th floor. As for how far they could go, it would depend on their physical fitness and perseverance. Chapter 1445. Under such circumstances, Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu did not try to move forward. Instead, they sat down and cultivated in seclusion. With the Yuanli in their body, coupled with the rich Yuanli around them, they believed that they would be able to break through to Orange Realm Rank 1 in a few days. From the moment they set foot on the 81st floor, everyone set their sights on the coffin at the top. Although there had not been any hints since they entered the ruins, they all knew that the final inheritance was at the coffin at the top. As long as they did not reach the top, they would not know what the final inheritance of the ruins was. Therefore, there was no difference between the 81st floor and the 99th floor. Only when they reached the 100th floor would there be a huge difference. However, the further they went, the more difficult it was. Even with Pan Zimo and Dong Hongyun's strength, they were still stuck on the 90th floor and could not move forward. Looking at the cultivators present, Pan Zimo and Dong Hongyun were the ones who walked the highest. In the face of such huge pressure, everyone even had a guess in their hearts. Maybe none of them would be able to get the final inheritance. Because this test was really too difficult. In fact, such a thing had happened in the history of the ruins. The reason why the owner of the ruins built the ruins was to find an excellent inheritor. If he did not find an excellent inheritor, the owner of the ruins would not casually give his most precious inheritance to a cultivator who was not good enough. Now everyone could not help but sigh. It was very likely that no one would be able to get the inheritance in the end. Because the owner of the ruins was not a simple person, the requirements for the inheritor he was looking for would be very high. At the 80th floor, it seemed that they were not far from the 100th floor. However, only when they reached here did they understand how far the distance was. Bailey Hongzhuang originally wanted to talk to Pan Zimo and Xia Jiqing. Suddenly, the Yuanli in her body surged. It was obvious that she was about to break through. After discovering this, Bailey Hongzhuang did not speak anymore. She immediately sat down cross-legged and cultivated in seclusion. Pan Zimo and the others saw Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly sit down in the middle of her words, their eyes filled with doubt. However, when they felt the surrounding yuanqi continuously pouring into Bailey Hongzhuang's body, they understood what was going on. It turned out that Bailey Hongzhuang was about to break through. Bailey Hongzhuang circulated the devil's summoning scripture, and the surrounding elemental energy was continuously absorbed into her body, strengthening the elemental energy in her meridians. The origin energy was not immediately absorbed into Bailey Hongzhuang's dantian. Instead, it was gradually refined by the circulation of the demon summoning scripture. After the impurities were refined, only the purest origin energy was left. Only then did it flow into Bailey Hongzhuang's dantian. In fact, the essence energy on this stairway was much purer than the essence energy in the outside world. Many cultivators could directly absorb it. However, the devil's summoning scripture had a higher requirement for yuan qi. Therefore, when Bailey Hongzhuang cultivated, her yuan qi would increase at a slower rate than other cultivators. If other cultivators could see Bailey Hongzhuang's body, they would realize that the elemental energy in Bailey Hongzhuang's dantian was much purer than theirs. Chapter 1446. Bailey Hongzhuang, who had experience in cultivation in her previous life, knew how important it was to have pure elemental energy. Cultivators of the same level would have different combat powers. On one hand, it was because of the cultivation method and martial technique. On the other hand, it was also related to the purity of the elemental energy. Therefore, she did not blindly absorb elemental energy during cultivation. Instead, she patiently removed the impurities in the elemental energy before absorbing it. This was the only way to stabilize the foundation and allow the cultivator to go further. However, Bailey Hongzhuang realized that the demon summoning scripture had a high requirement for elemental energy. When she was cultivating the demon summoning scripture, it would automatically remove the impurities in the elemental energy. This saved her a lot of trouble. Once the impurities in the elemental energy were removed, this meant that Bailey Hongzhuang needed more elemental energy than normal people to break through. When Pan Zimo and Dong Hongyun saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was about to break through, they did not feel anything. After all, many of the cultivators present had already broken through. Even for them, under such dense origin energy, the cultivation in their bodies was constantly increasing. It was likely that the next breakthrough would not be too far away. However, when they saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was continuously absorbing elemental energy, their gazes gradually changed. As the attractive force from Bailey Hongzhuang's body grew stronger, the surrounding elemental energy continuously flowed into Bailey Hongzhuang's body. Lady Bailey should be breaking through from orange level 5 to orange level 6. However, the ripples caused by this breakthrough seemed to be stronger than normal breakthroughs. Pan Zimo stared at the elemental energy that was continuously flowing into Bailey Hongzhuang's body. His eyes were filled with doubt and amazement. This ripple is indeed stronger than a normal cultivator's breakthrough. However, with Lady Bailey's status, this situation is not strange. Dong Hongyun quickly understood the crux of the matter and immediately said. As everyone knew, the more elemental energy one needed to break through, the more elemental energy one had stored in one's body. This meant that one's potential was even greater. With Bailey Hongzhuang's status, it was normal for her to have great potential. Which one of the outstanding young cultivators of the Xingxian continent was not a peerless talent? Although they boasted of being geniuses, in front of Tiangang Sek's young master's wife, they simply had no possibility of being compared. But if Dong Hongyun and Chen Shi found out that Bailey Hongzhuang was only a cultivator from a small dynasty, I wonder what sort of expression they would have. As Bailey Hongzhuang got closer and closer to the breakthrough, everyone realized that Bailey Hongzhuang's momentum was becoming more and more frightening. The dense elemental energy rushed towards Bailey Hongzhuang like a storm. Finally, it formed a funnel above Bailey Hongzhuang's head and poured into Bailey Hongzhuang's body. Seeing this scene, the cultivators present were completely dumbfounded. Oh my God, isn't the commotion caused by Bailey Hongzhuang's breakthrough too frightening? I've been a cultivator for so long, but I've never seen a cultivator who could cause such a huge commotion during a breakthrough. How much elemental energy does she need to do this? With so much elemental energy pouring into her body, isn't she afraid that her meridians will explode? This doesn't look like the commotion caused by breaking through to orange level 5. What's going on? Chapter 1447. Yuan Xiaoman's mouth turned into an O shape when she saw this scene. She knew that Big Brother had always been very extraordinary, but this situation was too abnormal. Thinking of this, Yuan Xiaoman couldn't help but pat Dongfang Yu on the shoulder and say, Dongfang, is Big Brother always so abnormal when he breaks through? Hearing this, Dongfang Yu shook his head with a blank expression, I don't know either. In the past, when Hong Zhuang broke through, he didn't pay too much attention to it. When Hong Zhuang broke through last time, he was also breaking through. He had always been focused on his own breakthrough, so he didn't pay attention to the situation at all. Speaking of which, today was the first time he really saw Hong Zhuang break through. However, the situation of this breakthrough was really shocking. Every time Hong Zhuang does something amazing, it's very shocking. Gong Xiaoqing looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, who was enveloped in Yuanli, and his voice was indifferent and filled with emotion. In fact, from the time they met Hong Zhuang until now, Hong Zhuang had done countless things that surprised them. Although the scene before them was unbelievable, this was Hong Zhuang's amazing point. Yuan Jixin stared blankly at Bailey Hongzhuang. No wonder Bailey Hongzhuang was able to obtain the inheritance of the blood-ground abyss. He felt that what everyone said was right. Any cultivator who obtained the inheritance of the blood-ground abyss would become an extraordinary person in the future. Based on Big Brother's current situation, he was destined to be an extraordinary person in the future. While Bailey Hongzhuang was breaking through, Xiao He and Xiao Bai were still sitting beside Bailey Hongzhuang. The two little fellows were constantly absorbing Yuanli. If one looked carefully, one would notice that there were two small cyclones above Xiao He and Xiao Bai's heads. However, due to the fact that Bailey Hongzhuang's breakthrough had attracted so much Yuanli that it had almost solidified, no one had noticed the existence of the two small cyclones beside Bailey Hongzhuang. This meant that in everyone's eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang's breakthrough was becoming more and more terrifying. It was almost shocking. My God! It's fortunate that she's on the stairway to heaven. Otherwise, if she were to break through somewhere else, I'm afraid the origin energy in this area wouldn't be enough for her. Back then, I once saw the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty team break through collectively. At that time, the elemental energy in the entire city was sucked dry. The elemental energy outside the city was also attracted over. Yes, I know that. After they broke through for a few days, the elemental energy in the city didn't completely recover. After such a chat, the name of the Tiangang dynasty was also known by many cultivators. Han Zimo glanced at Dong Hongyun. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang's identity was not something an ordinary person could compare to, this situation seemed to be too unusual, right? Dong Hongyun was silent for a while. Under such circumstances, he didn't know what to say. In fact, he also felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was too insane. I finally understand why Lady Bailey could unleash such powerful combat power when she's only at Orange Realm level 5. Han Zimo slowly said. It seemed that not only was Bailey Hongzhuang's combat skills impressive, but her potential was even more impressive. No wonder Han Xiling died at the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang even though his cultivation level was higher than Bailey Hongzhuang's. Chapter 1448. Bailey Hongzhuang, who was in the midst of her breakthrough, had blocked out all information from her surroundings. She knew that there was no danger in her breakthrough here. Previously, there were cultivators who tried to attack other cultivators who were in the midst of their breakthrough here. However, there seemed to be some kind of restriction on the stairway which prevented the man from doing anything. Everyone was very grateful for the consideration that the owner of the ruin had given them today. Since the beginning of the assessment, who had not offended a few opponents along the way. In an environment like the stairway, it was expected that they would break through. Once a cultivator attacked them while they were breaking through, not only would they not be able to improve their cultivation, but they would also be severely injured due to the failure of their breakthrough. However, the cultivators did not want to give up on the opportunity to break through just like that. It was extremely difficult to break through normally. Now that they finally had a chance to improve their cultivation, they did not know when the next opportunity would come if they missed it. Bailey Hongzhuang did not know that everyone had already listed her as a crazy person when she was breaking through. She only felt that breaking through on the stairway was exceptionally satisfying. Normally, she would not have so much primary energy when she was breaking through. In this place where the primary energy was so abundant, she could use this opportunity to refine the primary energy in her body even more. However, during the process of breaking through, she could also feel Xiao He and Xiao Bai's breakthrough. Although Xiao He and Xiao Bai did not form a contract with her, she could sense Xiao He and Xiao Bai telepathically. Therefore, when the two beasts were breaking through, she could also feel it in her heart. Boom! Crack! Bailey Hongzhuang could only feel the circulating primary energy in her meridians entering her dantian. At the same time, the sound of a barrier breaking was heard. She had successfully broken through to Orange Realm Level 6. However, after breaking through, Bailey Hongzhuang did not stop cultivating immediately. Instead, she continued to refine the primary energy in the air and used it to stabilize her Orange Realm Level 6 cultivation. However, in the process of stabilizing her cultivation, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly realized that a 7-colored light had quietly appeared in her dantian. The rainbow-colored light was like a fish swimming in her dantian. She carefully sensed it and found that the rainbow-colored light was not harmful to her dantian. On the contrary, she could feel that the elemental energy enveloped by the rainbow light was much stronger than other elemental energies. What is this? Bailey Hongzhuang was flabbergasted. She had cultivated for so many years, but she had never seen 7-colored energy appear in her dantian. Furthermore, she hadn't come into contact with anything strange before this. Logically speaking, this shouldn't have happened. Suddenly, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up as a possibility appeared in her mind. Could it be the rainbow dantian? Previously, Di Beichen had told her that the descendants of the Lan family had a mysterious inheritance. Her dantian used to be the rainbow dantian and there was a rainbow pearl in her dantian. However, the rainbow pearl was taken away by Lan Qingyan and her dantian was completely shattered. Now that this rainbow light had suddenly appeared, could it be related to the rainbow dantian? After thinking about this, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but fall into deep thought. Chapter 1449. The reason why Lan Qingyan's name could resound throughout the entire Xingxian continent at such a young age was obviously related to this rainbow dantian. Everything was just as Bailey Hongzhuang had sensed earlier. The elemental energy with that trace of rainbow light was much stronger than other elemental energies. Could it be that after the rainbow god pearl was taken away, there was still a trace of rainbow energy in her body? Bailey Hongzhuang's mind was constantly thinking, why would the 7-colored energy appear now? She didn't know if her dantian could still become a rainbow dantian after the rainbow god pearl was taken away. Her clear and bright eyes were filled with a trace of helplessness. She didn't know much about the rainbow dantian. She only knew what Di Beichen had told her. As a result, she was unable to deduce anything else at the moment. It seemed that she could only wait until after the assessment competition to find out more. When Bailey Hongzhuang opened her eyes, she found that many cultivators' eyes were on her, revealing a bit of emotion, a bit of surprise, and a bit of disbelief. Facing everyone's gaze, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes couldn't help but be filled with doubt. What happened? Why was everyone looking at her with such a strange gaze? Hongzhuang, the commotion caused by your breakthrough is a bit scary. Dongfang Yu looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with emotion. Because Bailey Hongzhuang's breakthrough caused too much of a commotion, many cultivators were looking at her until her breakthrough ended. Fortunately, the elemental energy on this sky stairway was very rich, so the time needed to break through was much shorter than usual. Is there? Bailey Hongzhuang was a little surprised. She knew that she needed more elemental energy than other cultivators when she broke through, but it shouldn't be enough to make everyone reveal such an expression. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Yuan Xiaoman, Yuan Jixin, Gong Xiaoqing, and even Dongfang Yu nodded together and said, yes. Upon seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned. However, when her gaze fell on Xiao He and Xiao Bai, she immediately understood what was going on. She wasn't the only one who was breaking through just now. The other two beasts were also breaking through. She was afraid that everyone would think that she was the only one who caused this commotion. Speaking of which, if a cultivator were to cause such a commotion while breaking through, the commotion would indeed be shocking. I see. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. Her face, which was already beautiful enough to topple a city, was now even more charming. Xiao He and Xiao Bai winked at Bailey Hongzhuang. It seemed that their master would have to take the blame for them this time. Bailey Hongzhuang's original injuries were no longer affected by this breakthrough. Bailey Hongzhuang only felt that her whole body was refreshed and very comfortable. I'll continue to walk up, Bailey Hongzhuang said. She could still bear the current pressure. In her opinion, this was a good opportunity to cultivate her body's strength. She definitely couldn't miss it. Everyone nodded. They were already stuck at their current level. It was extremely difficult for them to take another step forward. They could only hope that Bailey Hongzhuang would be able to progress further. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to walk up, another attractive force came from behind her. Chapter 1450. Seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others all had smiles on their faces. The final inheritance of the ruin's owner was really too helpful to them. Regardless of whether they could reach the 100th floor or not, just the increase in their cultivation here was already a great thing. Everyone will make breakthroughs one after another. When we leave the ruins, our team's strength will increase by quite a bit. Gong Xiaoqing's eyes were filled with joy. When they first came to the small world, their strength was only comparable to that of a small empire's team. But along the way, their strength continued to increase and the number of people in their team gradually increased. Under such circumstances, their strength was about to surpass that of a middle-sized empire's team. Their team's battle strength was very strong because of the existence of Hong Zhuang and Mo Yinjue. However, their strength wasn't very strong. Until now, they were only comparable to a middle-sized empire's team. No matter what, being able to increase their cultivation meant that they could make more contributions to the team. Dongfang Yu chuckled, yes, this time's ruins really gave us a big surprise. Originally, they thought that it would be extremely difficult to obtain a treasure among so many competitors. But along the way, their luck was really good. When he thought of this, Dongfang Yu's gaze couldn't help but fall on Bailey Hongzhuang. If it wasn't for Bailey Hongzhuang finding a way to break it, they probably wouldn't have obtained anything. Speaking of which, they were most fortunate to be in the same team as Bailey Hongzhuang. Everyone, do your best. If we cultivate here for one more day, our cultivation speed will be faster than usual. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a light and moving smile. Her gaze slowly fell on the coffin on the 100th floor. After seeing everything in front of her, she had an indescribable admiration and worship for the ruin's owner. Just this stairway to heaven was already an exceptionally precious treasure. The ruin's owner was able to give them the opportunity to cultivate on this stairway to heaven. This meant that he was giving them all a precious gift. Bailey Hongzhuang held a trace of reverence in her heart as she continued to move forward. She didn't walk up several steps in a row. She only rested for a moment after climbing up a flight of stairs. After her body had adapted to the pressure, she continued to climb up. Pressure was very beneficial for increasing one's strength. But if the speed was too fast, the body couldn't adapt and this could cause some hidden injuries. As a cultivator, injuries were common. Therefore, many cultivators didn't pay too much attention to it, resulting in hidden injuries in their bodies. Once a hidden injury was present in the body, it would affect the cultivator's future growth. As a doctor, Bailey Hongzhuang was very familiar with this kind of situation. Therefore, she definitely wouldn't allow such a thing to happen to her. The same level. The same. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's speed, Pan Zimo and Dong Hongyun were really envious. After 3 whole days, the two of them were still stuck on the 90th floor, unable to move. This was because the pressure on the 91st floor would suddenly increase. Chapter 1451. Miss Bailey, you're really amazing. Pan Zimo looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with eyes full of amazement. It had to be said that with Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation, she was really amazing to be able to reach level 90. Their cultivation was higher than Bailey Hongzhuang, but they could only reach this far. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and did not say anything. Nowadays, cultivators only focused on their cultivation. Very few cultivators focused on their physical strength. Therefore, it was normal for them to be blind. Miss Bailey, the pressure on level 91 will increase again. It's better not to try if you're not fully prepared. Dong Hongyun kindly reminded her. Bailey Hongzhuang chose to forgive him. He was already very grateful to Bailey Hongzhuang. Therefore, he was not the least bit dissatisfied with Bailey Hongzhuang. Instead, he was full of respect for her. Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and said, "Thank you for the reminder. I'll take note." Just by looking at Pan Zimo and Dong Hongyun, who had not advanced for the past few days, she already knew that the pressure on level 90 was not small. The pressure now was already so strong that she could barely stand straight. If the pressure suddenly increased, it would be extremely difficult. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang also sat down cross-legged and used the demon summoning scripture to continuously let her body get used to the existence of the pressure. The reason why human cultivators could have the ability to seize the heavens was because humans had a wonderful adaptability. In the process of the pressure slowly increasing, the human body would continuously adapt to the pressure, and thus accept the higher intensity of the pressure. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang start to cultivate, Pan Zimo and Dong Hongyun also continued to cultivate. Although they had not given up in their hearts, they had to admit that it was not possible for them to reach level 100. To Bailey Hongzhuang, she only felt that it was an extremely good thing to be able to cultivate in a place with such abundant origin energy. As for whether or not she could reach level 100, she would definitely do her best. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang working so hard in her closed-door cultivation, Pan Zimo and Dong Hongyun also started to cultivate. If they really could not reach level 100, they would have to work hard to cultivate here for a period of time. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was cultivating, Mo Yunjue, who had stopped at level 41, also started to move. After nearly 10 days of recuperation, the injuries on his back had basically recovered. This was all thanks to Bailey Hongzhuang's acupuncture. Or else, his injuries would not have healed so quickly. In the next moment, Mo Yunjue started to move. Level 50. 60 level, 60 level, 70 level, 70 level, 80 level, 80 level. At first, when Mo Yunjue walked up, no one paid much attention to him. After all, other than Mo Yunjue, there were not many cultivators who stopped at level 41. Everyone knew that Mo Yunjue was injured, which was why he stopped at level 41. However, now that they saw Mo Yunjue walking to level 80 at such a fast speed without any signs of stopping, they could not help but feel surprised. They did not expect the cultivators of Tiangang dynasty to be so powerful. Bailey Hongzhuang's performance was already very shocking. Who would have thought that Mo Yunjue's performance was also so shocking? A middle-sized dynasty team, this was really too abnormal. Chapter 1452. Young Master Mo, have you recovered from your injuries? Yuan Xiaoman looked at Mo Yunjue with concern. From the time Mo Yunjue was injured until now, it had to be said that Mo Yunjue's perseverance was very amazing. At least, Mo Yunjue was a real man. Mo Yunjue's handsome face was full of smiles as he nodded slightly and said, "I'm fine now." "That's great. Yuan Shaoman praised. Young Master Mo, your injuries are recovering really fast. Dongfang Yu looked at Mo Yinjue in amazement. How serious were Mo Yinjue's injuries before? He thought that it would be impossible for him to recover without half a month's time, but now, it had only been 10 days and Mo Yinjue had already recovered to his original state. It could only be said that his recovery ability was very amazing. In the past, I suffered a lot of injuries, so slowly, my injuries recovered faster than usual. Mo Yinjue's voice was indifferent and calm, but when these words fell into the ears of Gong Xiaoqing and the others, they had a different feeling. Previously, when they saw the scars on Mo Yinjue's body, they couldn't help but be shocked. With such injuries, they almost didn't dare to imagine how many battles Mo Yinjue had to go through to leave such scars. Even if Mo Yinjue said it so casually, they understood that it wasn't so simple. Mo Yinjue glanced at Bailey Hongzhuang above, then said to Gong Xiaoqing and the others, "I'll go up first." Hearing this, Yuan Shaoman couldn't help but be surprised and said, "Young Master Mo, you have to pay attention to your injuries, the pressure up there will be even greater." "Don't worry, I know what to do." As soon as his voice fell, Mo Yinjue didn't stay and immediately continued to climb up. When the crowd saw that Mo Yinjue was still able to continue climbing, their hearts were filled with admiration and emotion, but more importantly, they were speechless. Mo Yinjue had only just recovered from his injuries, but he was already full of energy and vigor. How could they, who had worked so hard for so long but still remained in the same place? Bailey Hongzhuang, who was in the middle of cultivating, suddenly felt a familiar aura approaching. She could not help but stop cultivating. After seeing Mo Yinjue reach the 85th floor so quickly, Bailey Hongzhuang also had a hint of surprise in her eyes. Sensing Bailey Hongzhuang's astonished gaze, the smile in Mo Yinjue's eyes deepened. He sped up and quickly approached Bailey Hongzhuang. After Pan Zimo and Dong Hongyun saw Mo Yinjue's abnormal speed, the two of them were speechless. First, they were stimulated by Bailey Hongzhuang, and now they were stimulated by Mo Yinjue. This blow was really not small. However, Pan Zimo knew Mo Yinjue's identity. With Mo Yinjue's abnormal strength, this kind of thing was definitely not difficult for him. Compared to Pan Zimo's calmness, Dong Hongyun was extremely surprised. Bailey Hongzhuang's identity was extraordinary, so it was normal for her to be able to reach this step. However, Mo Yinjue went all the way from the 40th floor to the 80th floor. The pressure on his body was extremely terrifying. This kind of shock was even more shocking than the shock brought by Bailey Hongzhuang. What kind of people were these cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty? Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yinjue were actually so powerful. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly, her clear eyes filled with worry. Mo Yinjue, your injuries can't take this kind of pressure. Chapter 1453. Mo Yinjue's speed was very fast, and it didn't take long for him to reach Bailey Hongzhuang's side. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's brows gradually furrowed. According to her judgment, Mo Yinjue's injuries shouldn't be able to completely recover within 10 days. And Mo Yinjue had walked all the way from the 41st floor to the 90th floor. The pressure he had endured was too great, and it was very likely that it would cause his injuries to worsen. Your injuries shouldn't have healed yet. To suddenly endure such great pressure, it's very likely that it will cause hidden dangers to your future cultivation. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Mo Yinjue in confusion. With Mo Yinjue's strength, he should have known about this. Why did he suddenly come up? This was too impulsive. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's dissatisfaction and concern, Mo Yinjue's smile gradually widened. Worried about me? Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang glared at Mo Yinjue. You're still in the mood to joke at a time like this. Your body is your own. If something goes wrong, you'll definitely regret it in the future. According to her judgment, Mo Yunjue's cultivation talent was absolutely outstanding. Presumably, he would become an outstanding cultivator in the Xingxian continent in the future. If these problems that could have been avoided ended up hurting his own future, anyone would feel that it was a pity. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's reaction, Mo Yunjue's smile remained, "Don't worry, my injuries are no longer a problem." Bailey Hongzhuang looked suspiciously at Mo Yunjue. "Really? With the severity of your injuries, it shouldn't be possible for you to recover so quickly." Mo Yunjue smiled and nodded. His voice was filled with a kind of convincing power. "You've overlooked one thing. For someone like me, who is used to getting injured, the speed at which my wounds heal is much faster than ordinary cultivators." As Mo Yunjue spoke, Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly taken aback. Her eyes were filled with thoughts. Just as Mo Yunjue had said, some cultivators who were frequently injured would heal faster than ordinary cultivators because their bodies had a certain degree of adaptability. As soon as she thought about the large and small wounds on Mo Yunjue's body, Bailey Hongzhuang understood this point. "Then you still have to pay more attention. If you can't bear it, just stay here and cultivate," Bailey Hongzhuang continued. "I understand," Mo Yunjue smiled and sat down beside Bailey Hongzhuang. "I didn't expect the origin energy on the 90th level to be so dense. If I could cultivate here on a normal day, my cultivation speed would be much faster than ordinary cultivators." Even though Mo Yunjue was experienced and knowledgeable, the stairway to heaven had exceeded his expectations. Not only that, he couldn't understand why the origin energy on the stairway to heaven would be so dense. It was too shocking. Even some powerful formations could only increase the density of origin energy by 5 times at most. However, it was 10 times more here. It didn't make sense at all. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. "The owner of the ruins is really an extraordinary existence. His methods are not something that ordinary people can understand." "Indeed." Mo Yunjue's deep voice was filled with emotion. The methods of these experts were each more amazing than the other. They couldn't completely understand it. The owner of the ruins' final inheritance should be on the top level. Chapter 1454. Following Mo Yunjue's gaze, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes also fell upon the coffin. Perhaps the owner of the ruins is sleeping in that coffin. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze was distant and deep. She did not know why the owner of the ruins had designed the ruins in such a way and placed the coffin at the top. However, no matter what, the respect in her heart would not change. There's another possibility. Perhaps this stairway is the final inheritance of the owner of the ruins. Mo Yunjue chuckled. There was only one coffin at the top. In reality, no one would know whether or not there was an inheritance inside. It's possible. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a faintly discernible smile. Up until now, the owner of the ruins had not revealed himself nor had he shared any information with them. Hence, they could only rely on themselves to figure out everything. "Aren't we going up?" Mo Yunjue asked when he saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was still standing there. Hearing this, the look in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes changed. She then replied, "Let's go up." In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue turned around at almost the same time and prepared to make their way to the 91st step. Although Pan Zimo and Dong Hongyun did not say a word, their eyes could not help but fall upon Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue. The two of them had tried for so long but had not succeeded in setting foot on the 91st step. Now, Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue were about to begin their challenge. They did not know if they would succeed in their challenge. Bailey Hongzhuang took a step forward. The moment she set foot on the 91st step, a huge pressure suddenly pressed down on her body. Her back, which had been gradually straightening, immediately bent under the pressure. Her body felt as if it was being pressed down by a huge mountain. Even the blood in her body was not flowing smoothly for a moment. After feeling the pressure, Bailey Hongzhuang finally understood why Pan Zimo and Dong Hongyun had remained on the 91st step and had not made it to the top. It was because the pressure was indeed shocking. Being caught off guard and suffering from such a huge pressure would cause internal injuries to one's body. Almost at the moment when she felt the pressure, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately unleashed the jade body. A lustrous jade color quietly spread across Bailey Hongzhuang's body, causing the originally unbearable pressure to lessen slightly. Under this huge pressure, Bailey Hongzhuang's face flushed red. However, she controlled herself to slowly familiarize herself with the pressure. All the cells seemed to be squeezed under this pressure, and Bailey Hongzhuang was even more aware that if she cultivated under such pressure, once she left the pressure, her physical condition would be much better. When Mo Yunjue walked up to the 91st floor, his expression still changed a little, but he quickly returned to normal. Judging from his calm demeanor, it was as if the pressure did not affect him much. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Mo Yunjue in astonishment. It seemed that Mo Yunjue's strength was not ordinary. His body was also very strong. Mo Yunjue also looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. The pressure on this level is very strong. If you can't take it, you should go back to the 91st step. Bailey Hongzhuang was only a girl. This kind of elemental energy was too much for her to bear. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head slightly. Her face was still red, but her eyes were filled with certainty. I can take it. Chapter 1455. She could withstand this kind of pressure, but she would need some time to get used to it. Mo Yunjue's deep and handsome eyes were filled with concern. However, upon closer inspection, he realized that although Bailey Hongzhuang's face was slightly red, she did not seem to be in any bad condition. This meant that Bailey Hongzhuang could still withstand the pressure, but it would be difficult. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang persevered and got used to it for a while, he believed that she would not have any problems. Seeing this, Mo Yunjue also sat down. As Bailey Hongzhuang began to cultivate, he too began to cultivate. Pan Zimo and Dong Hongyun were dumbfounded. The two of them had tried for so long but were still unable to get used to the pressure on the 91st level. Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue had actually succeeded in one try. Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation level was weaker than the two of them. Under such circumstances, Bailey Hongzhuang had actually succeeded. Was it because Bailey Hongzhuang was too strong or because the two of them were too weak? Thinking of this, Pan Zimo and Dong Hongyun looked at each other and the two of them immediately tried to ascend to the 91st level. That huge force once again attacked them and Pan Zimo and Dong Hongyun's faces instantly turned red. The huge pressure felt as if it was going to crush their bones and they almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Pan Zimo and Dong Hongyun retreated back to the 91st level. Wanting to ascend to the 91st level was not as easy as Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue. All the cultivators' gazes fell upon Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue. So far, Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue were the ones who had managed to ascend the highest. If they were to ask who would be able to ascend to the highest level, it would be Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue who had the highest hopes. Bailey Hongzhuang ran the demon summoning scripture and a steady stream of Yuanli poured into her body. She found that the Yuanli here was pure and did not need to spend too much time refining it. After discovering this, Bailey Hongzhuang was even more surprised. It seemed that the surprises on this stairway were not small. Every time they reached a certain level, they would discover a wider world, which was amazing. Along with Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation, she slowly withdrew her jade-refined body. Now she was relying on her Yuanli of Yuanli to stay here. Once she stopped using her Yuanli of Yuanli, her condition would become extremely bad. Therefore, she of course, to withstand the pressure. However, it was obviously not to adapt to the pressure of Yuanli of the world of Yuanli. Of Yuanli of Yuanli of the Yuanli, 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 of Yuanli Hongziwanli. Since the two of them were stuck on the 80th level, they began to cultivate in seclusion in order to successfully break through to Orange Realm Level 1 and go to the 81st level. Not only the two of them, but the surrounding cultivators were also constantly making breakthroughs. Yuan Xiaoman did not fall behind and successfully broke through from Orange Realm Level 1 to Orange Realm Level 2. Bailey Hongzhuang's adaptation took a full 10 days. 10 days later, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly opened her eyes. She had restrained her Yuanli of Yuanli Hongzhuang and her body gradually got used to the pressure. In these 10 days, she clearly felt the process of her cells gradually becoming stronger under such pressure. Chapter 1456. With the passage of time, many cultivators on the heaven stairway had chosen to give up moving forward and just closed their doors to cultivate peacefully. Because as long as they could improve their cultivation, even if they could not get the final inheritance, it was not a bad thing. Bailey Hongzhuang opened her eyes and found that the surrounding situation had not changed. Han Zimo was still on the 90th floor, and Mo Yunjue was also beside her. The only change was that Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu appeared on the 80th floor. Speaking of which, the performance of the cultivators in their team was already very good. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang exit the state of cultivation, Xia Jiqing smiled and waved to Bailey Hongzhuang, "Boss, come on." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly and showed a bright smile to Xia Jiqing, "Let's do it together." She was already standing on the 91st floor, and the distance from the 100th floor was not far. She believed that as long as she worked hard enough, she would be able to go up. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly stood up and moved her body. After not moving for 10 consecutive days, she only felt that her body was also stiff. Now standing on the 91st floor, her body was still unable to stand straight, but it was undoubtedly much better than before. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's move, Mo Yunjue also stood up and said, "Are you going to continue?" Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, "It's time to continue." "Okay." Mo Yunjue chuckled. If there were some hidden dangers in his injuries before, after these 10 days of cultivation, there were no more problems. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang went up to the 92nd floor. Bailey Hongzhuang's body felt as if it was being pressed down by a 1,000-pound boulder, an indescribable feeling of heaviness came over her. Bailey Hongzhuang once again used the jade body to resist the pressure of this floor. Fortunately, the pressure was only a little stronger than the 91st floor, and not much stronger. Time passed slowly, and in the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. Outside the monument, a group of cultivators was still waiting for their teammates to return. It's been 3 months, and they haven't come out yet. What are they doing inside? I don't know, even if it's the inheritance, it shouldn't take so long. The problem is not here, the most important problem is that the inheritance can't be obtained by so many cultivators at the same time. What is the situation? The cultivators were helpless. Who made them have bad luck? They did not find the right mirror. Otherwise, they would also know what the inheritance of this ruin was and would not need to continue waiting here. The cultivators on the stairway to heaven seemed to have come to a standstill. Everyone put all their energy into cultivating. Bailey Hongzhuang was sitting on the 98th step of the heaven stairway. In the past 3 months, she had tried her best to climb up. Up to now, she had only climbed to the 98th step, but the 99th step was like a huge gap that could not be crossed. She tried to walk once, but the huge pressure almost completely reduced her body. She only went up for a moment, but she was already injured, and she immediately retreated. The difficulty of this 99th floor is almost greater than all the previous steps combined. It's really too difficult to successfully climb up. Chapter 1457. A complicated light flashed in Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black, phoenix-like eyes. She then turned her gaze towards the coffin which was just inches away from her. From this height, she could clearly see the coffin's appearance. It was different from what they had imagined to be a simple coffin. This coffin was extremely large and the patterns carved into the coffin were extremely complicated. It gave off a strange and profound feeling. She had a faint premonition that this coffin contained the inheritance. Many cultivators had chosen to give up. Since it was no longer possible for them to obtain it, they might as well cultivate in peace. However, the closer she got to the coffin, the stronger the desire in her heart grew. It was as if this coffin contained something that she was very familiar with and longed for. When this thought had first appeared in her mind, she had been shocked as well. However, as the feeling grew stronger, she stopped thinking about it. She only had one thought left in her mind: walk up there. No matter what, she must walk up there. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly rose to her feet and prepared to try again. Even though she did not know what was inside, she knew that she would regret it if she missed this opportunity. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang was about to try again, Mo Yunjue's concerned voice rang out. Hongzhuang, the pressure on the 99th level is simply unsolvable. Don't try again. You'll only get hurt. Mo Yunjue had a complicated look in his eyes. Over the past few days, Bailey Hongzhuang had already gotten hurt a few times because she had tried to walk up there. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Mo Yunjue. Her expression remained resolute. Because of her obsession, no one could stop her from doing what she wanted. The moment Bailey Hongzhuang stepped onto the 99th level, a shocking pressure pressed down on her. Crack! Under this pressure, Bailey Hongzhuang's bones creaked as if the slightest movement would cause her bones to break. Pfft! Bailey Hongzhuang spat out a mouthful of blood. Even though it was only for a second, the pressure made her feel like she was about to die. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang in such a state, Mo Yunjue immediately wanted to pull Bailey Hongzhuang down, but Bailey Hongzhuang clearly had no intention of coming down. Bailey Hongzhuang forced herself to move forward step by step. She did not walk over, but crawled over. The immense pressure pressed down on her body, causing blood to flow out from her skin. Her meridians felt as if they would explode at any moment. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were fixed on the coffin. Just a little bit more and she would be able to go up. Hongzhuang. Mo Yunjue frowned and immediately stepped onto the 99th floor, intending to stop Bailey Hongzhuang. If they couldn't reach the top, they would only lose a portion of their inheritance. However, if Bailey Hongzhuang were to reach the top in her current state, she would lose her little life. Mo Yunjue could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Even he could not withstand such a terrifying pressure. The cultivators present were completely dumbfounded when they saw the state Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue were in. Just how terrifying was the pressure from above? Oh my God, this pressure is too terrifying. Bailey Hongzhuang really wants the inheritance more than her life. If she loses her life, what's the point of obtaining the inheritance? Who knows? I think she thinks she's so great that she's so bold. Chapter 1458. Xia Jiqing and the others also exited their cultivation state at this moment. Their eyes were fixed on Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue. They also wanted to stop Hongzhuang, but they had been stuck on the 80th floor and could not go up at all, so now they could only watch. What's wrong with the boss? The boss is not usually like this. Xia Jiqing frowned, her eyes filled with worry and puzzlement. She and the boss had known each other for so long, and she knew the boss very well. She was definitely not a person who would risk her life for treasures. What was going on now? I don't know, this Hongzhuang is indeed a bit strange. Is the thing in the inheritance very important to her? Gong Shaoqing was also thinking. This scene was really strange, but he was more worried about the safety of Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yinjue. With the boss's state, she will die before she reaches the 100th floor. A faint smell of blood spread in the air, and everyone could clearly see that Bailey Hongzhuang's white clothes had been dyed red with blood. In just a few seconds, Bailey Hongzhuang's white dress had been dyed red. From this, it could be seen how terrible the pressure on Bailey Hongzhuang was now. Mo Yinjue tried to pull Bailey Hongzhuang down, but under such pressure, it was difficult for him to even raise his hand. He could not pull Bailey Hongzhuang back. "Hongzhuang, come back." The low and hoarse voice was full of tension and overbearingness. Mo Yinjue's eyes became blood red, and even his voice was somewhat heart-wrenching. He did not know why Bailey Hongzhuang was so concerned about the coffin. Before, Bailey Hongzhuang did not show such an expression. It was really strange. Boom! Mo Yinjue's figure retreated to the 98th floor, and he almost rolled down the stairs. However, as Mo Yinjue rolled down the stairs and stopped at the 98th floor, he had already fainted. Bailey Hongzhuang gritted her teeth. Although her body was suffering great pain, the closer she was to the coffin, the stronger the call she felt. Her vision was gradually blurred by the blood, and Bailey Hongzhuang's figure was also tottering. Her mental strength was also gradually dissipating. Bailey Hongzhuang only felt that everything in front of her seemed to be gradually moving away from her. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to faint, a cool energy poured into her body, making her spiritual sense, which had been gradually blurring, clear again. At the same time, the colorful energy in her body quietly spread out, helping her block the huge pressure. With the appearance of this colorful energy, Bailey Hongzhuang only felt that her whole body was relaxed, and immediately went to the 100th floor again. When everyone saw this situation, they were all stunned. It can't. Can Bailey Hongzhuang really reach the 100th floor? This is too unbelievable. Wasn't she already on the verge of collapsing? How is she able to regain her strength now? The crowd, who had originally thought that Bailey Hongzhuang's actions were too stupid, now saw that Bailey Hongzhuang really seemed to be able to obtain the inheritance. Their disdain and ridicule had now turned into a thick sense of envy. Needless to say, this inheritance must be extremely powerful. Bailey Hongzhuang was able to obtain the inheritance, she was just too lucky. Chapter 1459. When Bailey Hongzhuang climbed to the 100th floor, all the pressure had disappeared, and Bailey Hongzhuang had completely fainted. Everyone watched in horror as Bailey Hongzhuang climbed to the 100th floor. This was something that they thought was impossible, but Bailey Hongzhuang actually did it. However, before everyone could sigh, everyone felt their bodies falling uncontrollably. When they saw everything in front of them again, they had already appeared outside the ruins. What's going on? Why did we come out? What happened just now? Why did we suddenly come out? It seems that Bailey Hongzhuang really obtained the inheritance, so we appeared outside the ruins. Oh my God, why didn't you let me cultivate inside for a while? That's much faster than cultivating outside. The cultivators who had been waiting outside the ruins for their teammates to come back saw so many cultivators suddenly come out together, and their eyes flashed with joy as they greeted them. You're finally out. We've been waiting for you for 3 months, and we thought you were in danger. Fortunately, as long as we can come out safely. Compared to the excitement of the cultivators who had been waiting outside for 3 months, the cultivators who had just come out were obviously not so happy. How rich was the energy in the heaven stairway? Even under the environment with 4 times the density of spirit energy, 1 day of rest was equivalent to 2 days of cultivation outside, not to mention 6 times or even 8 times the density of spirit energy. The 3 months they had spent cultivating inside was almost equivalent to a year of cultivation in the outside world. Their cultivation had improved a lot compared to their usual cultivation. If they could, they wanted to spend the next year of the assessment competition inside. But now, they would no longer have such a good opportunity. Xia Jiqing and the others also gathered together, but Mo Yinjue had already fallen into a coma. Gong Shaoqing immediately took out a pill and gave it to Mo Yinjue. In the previous scene, they could feel how much pressure Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yinjue were under. Now that Mo Yinjue had fallen into a coma, it could be seen that Mo Yinjue's injury was very serious. According to the current situation, Boss has succeeded in obtaining the inheritance. Yuan Jixin's eyes flashed with a complicated light. The moment Bailey Hongzhuang climbed the 100th step, they were all sent out. In addition to this reason, they could not find any other. Xia Jiqing nodded slightly, and her pretty face flashed with excitement. It must be like this. Boss is really too powerful, the inheritance that she obtained must be very good. I don't know how long it will take for Hongzhuang to accept the inheritance. Should we continue to wait here or go to the city? Yuan Xiaoman asked doubtfully. If Mo Yinjue was not injured, they could have just waited here. However, Mo Yinjue's injury was very serious now, and finding a place to recuperate was the most important thing. Hearing this, Gong Shaoqing and the others looked at each other, thinking of a solution in their minds. How about this, Dongfang and I will take Mo Yinjue back to the city, you guys wait here for Hongzhuang to come out. Once Hongzhuang comes out, we will meet in the city. Chapter 1460. As Gong Shaoqing's voice fell, Xia Jiqing and the others nodded in agreement. Okay, you have to be more careful. You too. Gong Shaoqing said solemnly. The number of people in their team was not large, and now that they were divided into two groups, the number of people was even smaller. Once a cultivator came to find trouble, their situation would be more dangerous. We will. Seeing this, Gong Shaoqing and Dongfang Yu looked at each other, and the two immediately helped Mo Yinjue back to the city. Fortunately, they had performed well in the ruins before. Some cultivators would be shocked by their strength and would not take the initiative to find trouble. However, just as Gong Shaoqing and the others were about to leave, the cultivators of the Qinrun dynasty and the Wanyan dynasty came over. Young Master Dongfang, it is very dangerous for you to be alone. Why don't we escort you back to the city? This way, we can ensure your safety. Pan Zimo's face was filled with a kind smile. He had become friends with Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Now that the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty were in trouble, he naturally could not stand by. What's more, with Mo Yinjue's identity, he naturally had to take good care of him. In his opinion, it was a good thing to have the opportunity to get closer to a cultivator of such status. If it was an ordinary cultivator, he was afraid that they would not have such an opportunity. He believed that Mo Yinjue and Bailey Hongzhuang would remember his kindness. Dong Hongyun walked to the side of Xia Jiqing and the others and said, "Why don't we wait with you for Miss Bailey to come out? There are many cultivators in the vicinity who have not given up. It is very dangerous for the four of you to stay here." As Dong Hongyun said, many cultivators were reluctant to leave the heaven stairway. They only hoped that they could enter the ruins again and continue to cultivate on the heaven stairway. Hongzhuang was a cultivator in their team. This was something that many people knew. Perhaps some cultivators would take advantage of the fact that they had fewer people to attack them. It was better to be safe than sorry. If such a thing really happened, it would undoubtedly be extremely terrible. Xia Jiqing and the others looked at each other. Although they had a hostile relationship with the cultivators of the Qinrun dynasty, Dong Hongyun had been very kind. He should not do anything bad to them. Seeing Xia Jiqing and the others show some hesitation, Pan Zimo couldn't help but say, "Don't worry, Dong Hongyun won't have any bad thoughts." With Bailey Hongzhuang's identity, if Dong Hongyun had any evil thoughts, he would be courting death. As Pan Zimo's voice fell, Dong Hongyun could not help but glance at Pan Zimo. He did not expect that Pan Zimo would actually help him clear his name at such a time. However, thinking about it carefully, during this period of time on the stairway to heaven, although the two of them still did not treat each other well, it was undoubtedly much better than before. Seeing this, Yuan Jixin nodded and said, "Thank you, young Master Dong." They were not stupid people. With the strength of the Qin-run dynasty's cultivators, if they really wanted to attack them, there was no need for them to feign civility. If they attacked directly, they would not be a match at all. Therefore, there was only one possibility for Dong Hongyun and the others to help, that was, they were sincere. Seeing that Yuan Jixin and the others were willing to accept their help, the cultivators of the Qin-run dynasty showed a smile on their faces. Chapter 1461. Bailey Hongzhuang felt as if all the bones in her body were falling apart and her consciousness was extremely blurry. She wanted to wake up but her mind was in a state of chaos and she was unable to wake up completely. The intense pain in her body spread and not long after, she felt that she was in a cool and refreshing energy. The intense pain she felt was gradually alleviated by this energy. As the pain gradually subsided, Bailey Hongzhuang fell into a deep sleep. She had a dream. She dreamt that she was reunited with her parents. This dream was very long and when Bailey Hongzhuang woke up again, she even suspected that she was dreaming. As soon as Bailey Hongzhuang opened her eyes, she saw darkness. Her clear eyes could not help but be filled with doubt. Where was she now? She remembered that she had climbed up the 100th step with all her might. In the end, she had indeed succeeded but her body could not hold on any longer and she had fallen into a coma. As for what had happened after that, she did not know. Most importantly, why was there only darkness in front of her? Bailey Hongzhuang tried to get up but found that her head had bumped into an extremely hard object. Dong! Bailey Hongzhuang touched her aching head and was surprised to find that there was something on top of her head. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly opened the thing on top of her head and a dazzling light instantly shone in, causing her to squint her eyes. After Bailey Hongzhuang stood up, she was surprised to find that she had been sleeping in a coffin. Bailey Hongzhuang's clear and bright phoenix eyes were uncontrollably filled with shock. She turned around and looked at the heaven stairway behind her, only to find that the cultivator who had been cultivating on the heaven stairway had disappeared. She was the only one left in this large and empty hall. How could this be? Bailey Hongzhuang was extremely astonished. According to the previous situation, there was no other cultivator who had reached the 100th step except for her. So how could she be sleeping in this coffin? Just how serious were his injuries from before? However, when she woke up again, her injuries had completely healed. Not only that, her strength had also increased. This was simply too astonishing. Little girl, it seems that we are fated to meet. Just when Bailey Hongzhuang was surprised, an elegant and gentle male voice entered Bailey Hongzhuang's ears. Hearing this voice, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be stunned for a moment, but she quickly reacted. The person who spoke should be the owner of the ruins. In the next moment, a gentle figure appeared in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. The man was about 30 years old and his handsome and refined face gave people an indescribable sense of comfort. The stranger was like jade, and the young master was unparalleled. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but think of such a phrase. It was probably used to describe a man like the owner of the ruins. Greetings, Senior. Bailey Hongzhuang bowed. Thank you for saving my life, Senior. Based on the current situation, she didn't need to think to know that the owner of the ruins was the reason why her injuries had healed. Otherwise, based on her previous injuries, she didn't know how long it would take for her to recover. Chapter 1462. The pressure on the 99th step is very great. I always thought that my successor would be a man. I didn't expect it to be you. Yu Linfeng's heart was filled with surprise. The test in front of this stairway was not difficult. The difficult part was the last 3 steps. It was an extremely difficult test to begin with. Only by desperately walking to the 100th step would one be able to obtain his inheritance. According to his judgment, a female cultivator should not be able to withstand that kind of pain. A male cultivator was more likely. However, he did not expect that the person who obtained his inheritance in the end would be such a young lady. Moreover, she was so young. What's your relationship with the Lan family? Suddenly, Yu Linfeng's question stunned Bailey Hongzhuang for a moment. Her clear eyes were quickly filled with surprise. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Yu Linfeng in confusion. She had never thought that the master of the ruins would know that she was related to the Lan family. She had never mentioned this before. I was once a member of the Lan family, but I'm not anymore. Bailey Hongzhuang pondered for a moment before she finally gave her answer. The blood of the Lan family flowed in her bones. However, ever since the Lan family treated her family like that, she no longer had anything to do with them. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Yu Linfeng's deep and charming eyes changed a little. What do you mean? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Yu Linfeng in confusion. She did not immediately answer Yu Linfeng's question. Instead, she asked, Senior, what's your relationship with the Lan family? From Yu Linfeng's attitude, she could feel the slight change in Yu Linfeng's emotions when the Lan family was mentioned. If Yu Linfeng had nothing to do with the Lan family, Yu Linfeng would not be so concerned. I have nothing to do with the Lan family. Yu Linfeng's expression suddenly turned cold. A hint of disgust and coldness flashed across his eyes. He seemed to be very disdainful of the Lan family. Bailey Hongzhuang noticed the change in Yu Linfeng's expression and had a few guesses in her mind. It had to be said that Yu Linfeng was different from the masters of the ruins that she had known before. He did not give people a sense of distance, nor did he make cultivators feel great pressure. They only felt that the person in front of them was a very amiable senior. Yu Linfeng seemed to have sensed the change in him, and he quickly returned to his original gentle expression. Little girl, what's your name? Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang replied. Surnamed Bailey. Yu Linfeng looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in confusion. Logically speaking, Bailey Hongzhuang shouldn't be surnamed Bailey. Little girl Yu Linfeng, since you've climbed the stairway to heaven, then you're my, Yu Linfeng's, successor. I'm your master. Do you admit this? Yu Linfeng's eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang's body, a bit less gentle, a bit more serious and dignified. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded seriously and bowed, Senior is my master. Anyone who could obtain the inheritance of the master of the ruins would become the cultivator's master. Bailey Hongzhuang had always respected Yu Linfeng. Now, she naturally did not mind letting Yu Linfeng become her master. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's solemn and serious expression, Yu Linfeng's eyes revealed a hint of satisfaction. He had seen Bailey Hongzhuang's performance on the stairway to heaven. It had to be said that this young girl's strength, talent, and willpower were all very good. Chapter 1463. Since that's the case, you have to answer all my questions honestly. Can you do this? Yu Linfeng looked at Bailey Hongzhuang seriously. His inheritance was very important to him, but he had not found a suitable successor all these years. Although Bailey Hongzhuang was only a woman, he had to admit that Bailey Hongzhuang's performance was very suitable for him to find a successor. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, Master, please ask. Why do you have the power of the rainbow god pearl in your body? Yu Linfeng stared into Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. His sharp and wise eyes were full of wisdom, as if he could see through Bailey Hongzhuang's lies. Hearing Yu Linfeng mention the rainbow god pearl, Bailey Hongzhuang was a little surprised. The rainbow god pearl was an extremely secretive inheritance of the Lan family. Ordinary cultivators would not know much about it. How could Yu Linfeng know about it? Although she was confused, Bailey Hongzhuang still chose to tell Yu Linfeng about her situation. As the owner of the ruins, Yu Linfeng was already dead. Even if she told Yu Linfeng about her situation, it would not be a big deal. Thinking about it, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly told Yu Linfeng about her past. In fact, ever since Di Beichen told her about her past, this matter had been weighing on her heart. Whenever she thought about it, she would feel an indescribable hatred towards Lan Jinghuang and his family. However, she could not take revenge with her own hands. Therefore, whenever she thought of this matter, her heart would feel a piercing pain. She did not have the right to relax or rest. In the face of such a deep blood feud, she could only do her best. Only after saving her parents would she be able to relax. As Bailey Hongzhuang explained her past, Yu Linfeng's eyes were filled with shock. When he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang again, his expression was more caring and sympathetic than before. Bailey Hongzhuang was carrying such a deep blood feud at such a young age. It was not easy. The Lan family's way of doing things really hasn't changed at all. How disgusting. Yu Linfeng's face was filled with anger. Back then, the Lan family's actions were already ridiculous enough. Who would have thought that something like this would happen again? What a joke. The Lan family claimed to be a great family, but the things they did could not be openly known. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes filled with pain and depression. She had no idea what kind of torture her parents were going through at this time. She only hoped that Di Beichen could find her parents and save them. Only then could she be completely at ease. It's been hard on you all these years. Yu Linfeng sighed faintly. He had thought of many possibilities, but he never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang's life would be so tragic. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved into a smile, her eyes becoming more and more firm. All of this, I will return it one day. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Yu Linfeng looked deeply at Bailey Hongzhuang. At this moment, he finally understood why Bailey Hongzhuang was able to endure such pain during the previous test. It was because there was something more painful in her heart than her body. Chapter 1464. Since Lan Jinghuang and his family took the seven-colored sacred pearl from you, I'll give you another one. Yu Linfeng had a refined and confident smile on his face, and his words were filled with an unparalleled domineering aura. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Yu Linfeng in shock. She didn't understand what Yu Linfeng meant. The rainbow pearl is in Lan Qingyan's body. With my current strength, I can't take it back. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes shone with a complicated light. She had the same thought. Back then, Lan Jinghuang and his family took the rainbow pearl from her body and placed it in Lan Qingyan's body. In the future, she will definitely take back the rainbow pearl that belonged to her. She, Bailey Hongzhuang, would never give up her things to others. As long as she had more time, she would make Lan Jinghuang and his family regret it to death. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's stunned expression, Yu Linfeng's smile widened. I can't take back Lan Qingyan's rainbow pearl for now. I'll give you an even stronger one. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were even more puzzled. The rainbow pearl was a special inheritance of the Lan family. Only members of the Lan family could have it. And in her generation, she only had one rainbow divine pearl. How could Yu Linfeng have a second rainbow divine pearl? In reality, other than her rainbow pearl that was taken out by Lan Jinghuang and his family, no one else's rainbow pearl could be taken out of their bodies. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to question him, her gaze suddenly focused on Yu Linfeng's hand. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. How is this possible? On Yu Linfeng's right hand, a round and bright rainbow pearl was blooming with resplendent and dazzling light. Although Bailey Hongzhuang had never seen the rainbow pearl before, she was certain that the pearl in front of her was the rainbow pearl without a doubt. This was because the aura emanating from the rainbow god pearl was exactly the same as the strand of rainbow energy in her body. With the appearance of the rainbow pearl, Bailey Hongzhuang could clearly feel that the rainbow energy in her body had become much more lively. It was as if it wanted to become one with the rainbow pearl. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Yu Linfeng in shock. She couldn't believe that Yu Linfeng had the rainbow pearl. Yu Linfeng smiled at Bailey Hongzhuang. In this world, nothing is impossible. In the next moment, Yu Linfeng handed the rainbow pearl to Bailey Hongzhuang and said, "You and I are fated to be master and disciple. Take this rainbow pearl as my gift to you." Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the rainbow pearl in front of her. She felt like everything that had happened since she woke up was a dream. The rainbow pearl was something that was impossible to see on a normal day. Now, one had appeared before her eyes. However, when she thought about how her rainbow pearl had been taken away and how she had almost lost her life, she hesitated. If she did that, how would she be different from Lan Jingquang and his family that she hated? "Master, did you take this rainbow pearl from someone else as well?" Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Yu Linfeng. If that was the case, she would rather not have this rainbow pearl. After all, there was a reason to take back her own rainbow pearl. However, if she took someone else's rainbow pearl, it would be difficult for her to accept. Chapter 1465. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's hesitation, Yu Linfeng was also a little surprised. Logically speaking, Bailey Hongzhuang's rainbow sacred pearl had been snatched away. Now that she saw another rainbow sacred pearl, she should be extremely excited. If it were any other cultivator, they would not hesitate in such a situation and would directly accept it. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's reaction was a little different. On second thought, Yu Linfeng understood why Bailey Hongzhuang was hesitating. Immediately, the admiration in his eyes deepened. It seemed that the disciple he had found was of a better quality than he had imagined. At least, a cultivator who could perform like this would not be an ungrateful person. "Don't worry, this rainbow sacred pearl is mine." When he said this, Yu Linfeng's handsome face was filled with coldness, as if he was very unwilling to admit this. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was once again stunned. The seven-colored god pearl was Yu Linfeng's. Bailey Hongzhuang only felt that Yu Linfeng had given her too many surprises today. For a moment, she could not come back to her senses. If the rainbow sacred pearl belonged to Yu Linfeng, didn't that mean that Yu Linfeng was also a member of the Lan family? According to the information that Di Beichen had told her, this rainbow sacred pearl could only be possessed by cultivators from the Lan family. It was absolutely impossible for it to appear in the hands of other cultivators. Seeing the disbelief on Bailey Hongzhuang's face, Yu Linfeng continued, "I don't want to have any connection with the Lan family, so I took out this rainbow sacred pearl. You're different. After you obtain the rainbow sacred pearl, your true strength will be revealed." He was all alone in the world and had no attachments. The only thing he had that was connected to the Lan family was this rainbow sacred pearl. Therefore, he took out the rainbow sacred pearl. However, he didn't want to give the seven-colored sacred pearl to the Lan family so that the Lan family could develop better. Therefore, he kept the seven-colored sacred pearl with him. He didn't expect that the disciple he found was also a member of the Lan clan. Moreover, her background was quite similar to his. Perhaps this was fate arranged by the heavens. Bailey Hongzhuang was different from him. Bailey Hongzhuang still had her own parents. Therefore, she couldn't completely cut off her connection with the Lan family. Listening to Yu Linfeng's words, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately thought of many things. Obviously, Yu Linfeng was a member of the Lan family. However, no one knew what had happened in between that caused Yu Linfeng to hate the Lan family so much. She couldn't understand. As a cultivator of the Lan family, Yu Linfeng had the seven-colored sacred pearl in his body. The Lan family should treat him as a family treasure. Why was Yu Linfeng unhappy? Bailey Hongzhuang's heart sank. It seemed that Yu Linfeng's situation was also a secret. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't continue asking. There were many things that she didn't want to say. Is there no problem now? Yu Linfeng noticed the change in Bailey Hongzhuang's expression and asked with a smile. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. There's no problem. Then, let me help you integrate the 7-colored sacred pearl into your body. Yu Linfeng smiled and said. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Yu Linfeng in surprise again. According to what she knew, to integrate the 7-colored sacred pearl into one's body, one had to open one's dantian. There was a certain degree of danger. Moreover, one's previous cultivation would also disappear. Chapter 1466. Without waiting for Bailey Hongzhuang to voice her doubts, Yu Linfeng had already explained. Those idiots from the Lan family have had the rainbow sacred pearl for so many years, but they have never thought of a way to take it out and implant it. If the Lan family knew about this method, what happened to you wouldn't have happened. After some research, I successfully took out the rainbow sacred pearl and it didn't affect my cultivation. Now that I have merged the rainbow sacred pearl into your body, your cultivation won't be affected either. Following Yu Linfeng's words, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Yu Linfeng with more and more admiration in her eyes. Master is too amazing, isn't he? The Lan family had not been able to find any results for so many years, but Master managed to. However, when she thought about how much Master hated the Lan family and didn't want to have anything to do with them, she could understand that Master had put in a lot of effort to take out the rainbow sacred pearl. Thank you, Master. Bailey Hongzhuang bowed. Her gratitude and respect for Yu Linfeng couldn't be fully expressed. With the rainbow sacred pearl, her energy center would become a rainbow sacred pearl again and her cultivation speed would increase. In this way, it would be much easier for her to take revenge. Therefore, she couldn't refuse this help because she really needed it. Since you are my disciple and have suffered such unfair treatment from the Lan family, I naturally have to take revenge. Yu Linfeng's eyes shone with a deep light. The grudge between him and the Lan family hadn't been completely resolved yet, and now his disciple had such a conflict with the Lan family. It seemed that he was destined to be enemies with the Lan family. Sensing the change in Yu Linfeng's emotions, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded heavily. She would definitely take everything back and make Lan Jingquang and the other cultivators regret it. Blood for blood. In the next moment, under Yu Linfeng's instructions, Bailey Hongzhuang lay flat on the coffin lid. Yu Linfeng picked up the 7-colored divine pearl and his yuan power instantly spread out. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Yu Linfeng in shock. Such dense origin energy, the strength of his cultivation had simply exceeded her expectations. This process will be very painful. You have to bear with it, Yu Linfeng said. It wasn't easy to fuse the rainbow divine pearl into one's body. The 7-colored sacred pearl was the mysterious inheritance of the Lan family. The reason why the Lan family had been able to stand tall for so many years was inseparable from the 7-colored sacred pearl. The power of the 7-colored divine pearl was extremely powerful. If an ordinary cultivator wanted to rashly fuse with the 7-colored divine pearl, they would probably explode and die before they could successfully fuse with it. It was also not easy for Bailey Hongzhuang to fuse with the Rainbow God Pearl, but fortunately, she had the Rainbow God Pearl in her body before, so it would be easier for her than other cultivators. However, the pain was unavoidable. Only those with a strong heart could endure it. If you can't endure it, you will die. Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded without hesitation. Master, I will definitely endure it. Now that she finally had such an opportunity, she definitely wouldn't give it up so easily. No matter what kind of pain it was, she could endure it. That was because she still had two important things to do. When she thought of the pain her parents had endured all these years, what was she going through now? Chapter 1467. The hatred and tenacity in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes did not escape Yu Linfeng's eyes. He was even more aware of how determined Bailey Hongzhuang was under such circumstances. In the next moment, Yu Linfeng took action without hesitation. A resplendent and dazzling light burst forth. Yu Linfeng wrapped the rainbow god pearl with his elemental energy and slowly approached Bailey Hongzhuang's dantian. This was a process that required extreme caution. If there was any deviation, Bailey Hongzhuang's dantian would be affected and she might become a cripple. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the ceiling above the palace and calmed her nervous and worried emotions. Under such circumstances, there was no point in worrying or being nervous. She could only try her best to endure all of this. The moment the rainbow god pearl approached Bailey Hongzhuang's abdomen, Bailey Hongzhuang felt an extreme pain. It felt as if someone was ripping her body apart. Blood was dripping and the pain was unbearable. Bailey Hongzhuang bit her lips tightly. Her delicate little face instantly turned pale. Large beads of sweat seeped out from her forehead. Her expression was one of extreme pain. Yu Linfeng's gaze was still fixed on the rainbow god pearl. He controlled the rainbow god pearl to merge into Bailey Hongzhuang's dantian bit by bit. From Yu Linfeng's point of view, he would notice that a circular hole had appeared in Bailey Hongzhuang's dantian. He could clearly see the situation inside Bailey Hongzhuang's dantian. At this moment, Yu Linfeng was slowly merging the rainbow god pearl into Bailey Hongzhuang's body from this hole. However, this process was extremely slow. If he was not careful, he would destroy Bailey Hongzhuang's dantian. The moment the rainbow god pearl touched Bailey Hongzhuang's dantian, Bailey Hongzhuang only felt an unprecedented pain erupt. It was so painful that she was on the verge of collapse. Her body couldn't help but twitch. The pain was indescribable. Bailey Hongzhuang had bitten her cherry red lips until they were bleeding. The bright red blood stained Bailey Hongzhuang's teeth, but Bailey Hongzhuang did not feel anything at all. Her face turned pale, without a trace of blood, and her clothes were already soaked in cold sweat. Under such circumstances, every minute and every second was an extreme torture. Tiangang sect. Di Beichen, who was in the middle of cultivating, suddenly felt a burst of pain in his heart. He could not help but stop cultivating. This kind of discomfort was indescribable. It was not physical pain, but the pain of feeling the pain of the people he cared about. What happened to Hongzhuang? Di Beichen's first thought was Bailey Hongzhuang. He only felt so sad when something happened to Bailey Hongzhuang. From the time Hongzhuang participated in the assessment until now, he had never experienced such a situation. Now that he suddenly felt such a feeling, Di Beichen's heart tightened. Hongzhuang, nothing must happen to you. Di Beichen clenched his hands into fists. When he thought that something might happen to Hongzhuang, he felt that his heart was no longer his own. It was a kind of fear that came from the bottom of his heart. It was a fear that he could not bear. However, as he was in Tiangang's sect, he could not help Hongzhuang at all. He did not know what kind of danger Hongzhuang was in. When he thought of this, Di Beichen punched the wall fiercely. His 5 fingers were dripping with blood, but Di Beichen did not feel the slightest pain. All his thoughts were on Bailey Hongzhuang. No matter what, Hongzhuang must come back safely. Chapter 1468. If she could faint, that would be the happiest situation that Bailey Hongzhuang could imagine. However, the pain in her dantian was so intense that it was impossible for her to faint. On the contrary, the pain was unbearable. Not only that, the pain was gradually increasing. She felt like every second was like a year. Under Bailey Hongzhuang, her sweat had condensed into water. Her hair was wet and wet. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's dark eyes were still determined. She would return all the pain that she had to endure to Lan Jinghuang's family in the future. If it weren't for them, she wouldn't have to endure such pain. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't know that the rainbow sacred pearl that Yu Linfeng gave her was much more powerful than the one in Lan Qinyan's body. As the cultivator's power increased, the rainbow sacred pearl's power would also increase. What kind of formidable existence was Yu Linfeng? The rainbow sacred pearl in his body was naturally much more powerful than the one in Lan Qinyan's body. Therefore, one could imagine the pressure that Bailey Hongzhuang's Orange Realm Level 7 body had to endure the rainbow sacred pearl's power. Bailey Hongzhuang only felt that hundreds of years had passed, and even her willpower was on the verge of collapse under such severe pain. Countless times in her heart, she wanted to stop all of this, but the last bit of reason stopped all of this. Thinking about the pain that her parents had to endure all these years, she had the strength to continue. Yu Linfeng was also shocked by Bailey Hongzhuang's performance. He had experienced the pain of absorbing the rainbow sacred pearl. The pain was enough to make one collapse. Even with his willpower, he almost couldn't endure all of this back then. From this, one could see how intense the pain was. He originally thought that even if Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't take it anymore, he would still stabilize Bailey Hongzhuang's body and not let her retreat. Because once this process started, it could not be stopped. Otherwise, it would cause uncontrollable damage to Bailey Hongzhuang's dantian. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's performance was much better than he had expected. Although Bailey Hongzhuang's willpower was also on the verge of collapse, she always managed to control herself at the last moment. He knew very well that even a man with a strong will would not be able to bear all of this. However, a young woman like Bailey Hongzhuang could bear it. It was clear that Bailey Hongzhuang had a strong will. He had seen many young cultivators, but to be able to reach the level of Bailey Hongzhuang was really an extremely rare existence. It seemed that the Lan family had offended a very terrifying young man this time. For Bailey Hongzhuang to be able to become the owner of the Rainbow Divine Pearl, there was no need to mention how strong her talent was. In addition, with such willpower and determination, her future achievements would definitely not be simple. Not only that, but Bailey Hongzhuang's luck was also very good. Bailey Hongzhuang's luck was very good. Back then, when the Rainbow Divine Pearl was forcefully taken out of her when she was only an infant, she was still alive. As the light gradually dissipated, Yu Linfeng withdrew his hands. At that moment, the Rainbow Divine Pearl had successfully merged into Bailey Hongzhuang's body. However, before Bailey Hongzhuang could heave a sigh of relief, an intense pain exploded once again. The power of the Rainbow Divine Pearl was too strong. With just a slight circulation, Bailey Hongzhuang's meridians could no longer withstand it. Chapter 1469. Tisk. Tsk. Bailey Hongzhuang could only hear the sound of her meridians exploding inch by inch. She could not control it at all. Pft. Bailey Hongzhuang spat out a mouthful of blood. Her body spasmed uncontrollably, and her clothes were stained red with blood. Yu Linfeng was not surprised when he saw this. In fact, this was within his expectations. Judging from Bailey Hongzhuang's meridians, which were at the 7th level of the Orange Realm, were already very tough. However, after fusing with the Rainbow Pearl, her meridians were no longer tough enough. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang was his disciple, he naturally would not allow her to do this. Yu Linfeng then took out a pill and fed it to Bailey Hongzhuang. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang's meridians were all exploding, he wanted to reconstruct her meridians. In this way, Bailey Hongzhuang's meridians would become much more solid, which would be extremely helpful for her cultivation in the future. As the pill entered her mouth, Bailey Hongzhuang could feel a cooling energy flowing into her body, which reduced the initial pain by a little. In fact, after enduring the terrifying pain from before, the unbearable pain that she was going through now was not that painful for her anymore. Slowly, Bailey Hongzhuang fell into a coma again. For the current Bailey Hongzhuang, being in a coma was a very celebratory thing. After Bailey Hongzhuang fell into a coma, Yu Linfeng did not stop there. He took out another pill and fed it to Bailey Hongzhuang. His elemental energy slowly flowed into Bailey Hongzhuang's body, helping Bailey Hongzhuang to reconstruct her meridians. Bailey Hongzhuang did not know how long she had been in a coma. When she woke up again, she saw a tall white figure standing not far away from her. "Master!" Bailey Hongzhuang called out. Yu Linfeng slowly turned around. When he saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had woken up, a smile appeared on his face. "You're awake." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. She immediately stood up and bowed to Bailey Hongzhuang. "Let's check the condition of your body first." Yu Linfeng looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a smile. After merging with the Rainbow Pearl, he was more and more satisfied with Bailey Hongzhuang as his disciple. Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately checked the condition of her body. Before she fainted, she had realized that her meridians were exploding inch by inch. She was extremely shocked by the thought that she might not be able to walk again. She did not expect to be able to wake up again. Moreover, her body did not feel any discomfort at all. As Bailey Hongzhuang checked her condition, she could not help but be stunned for a moment. Her pitch-black eyes were filled with shock and surprise. Her dantian had turned into a rainbow dantian. Rainbow energy was circulating in her dantian. At the center of her dantian was the rainbow pearl. Because of the rainbow pearl, even her elemental energy had turned into a rainbow color. It was magnificent and gorgeous. Moreover, the capacity of her dantian was much larger than before. It could store more elemental energy. Bailey Hongzhuang could feel that the rainbow pearl was much stronger than her elemental energy. It was just like the rainbow pearl energy that appeared in her body previously. Chapter 1470. Upon closer inspection, Bailey Hongzhuang discovered that not only had her meridians been widened, they had also become tougher. This change was no different from her meridians being reconstructed. Her ink-black phoenix eyes were filled with pleasant surprise. Bailey Hongzhuang exclaimed in her heart. The changes in her meridians had completely exceeded her imagination. She had always known that for cultivators, the wider and tougher the meridians, the more origin energy the cultivator would be able to carry when executing martial skills and cultivating. However, meridians were originally extremely fragile, so it was not easy to change them to such a state. Previously, she had already planned to use the assistance of pills to widen her meridians bit by bit. However, this was a rather long process. If she wanted to complete all of this, she would need a lot of time. She did not expect that after her meridians exploded, her meridians would actually be completely reconstructed. This was simply too out of her expectations. "Master, my meridians have been reconstructed." Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Yu Linfeng in surprise. She was very clear in her heart how terrible her body's condition was before she fainted. Now that her meridians and dantian had become like this, there was no need to think about it. This was definitely due to Yu Linfeng. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's happy expression, the smile in Yu Linfeng's eyes deepened. "It seems that you are quite satisfied with your changes." Hearing Yu Linfeng's words, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but say, "More than satisfied. This is simply too pleasant a surprise." In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang bowed to Yu Linfeng and said, "Thank you, Master." Yu Linfeng waved his hand slightly, and his smile became more amiable, since you are my disciple, as your master, it is only right for me to help you. You have already fused with the Rainbow Divine Pearl. As for familiarizing yourself with the Rainbow Divine Pearl and using its power, you will have to figure it out yourself. Master hopes that you can become stronger as soon as possible. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded heavily and said, Master, I will not disappoint you. When your strength is strong enough, Master will be able to hand over the position to you without worry. Yu Linfeng sighed slowly. His smile revealed a bit of relaxation and relief. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned. She looked at Yu Linfeng in confusion, not knowing what Yu Linfeng meant. From the moment you became my disciple, you became the next palace master of the Celestial Palace. Yu Linfeng looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with satisfaction. Although he hadn't known Bailey Hongzhuang for long, he was very satisfied with his disciple. He believed that Bailey Hongzhuang would not let him down. Limitless Palace? Bailey Hongzhuang asked in confusion. She vaguely remembered hearing the name Limitless Palace before. It was a sect in the Xingxian continent, and its reputation was very resounding. According to what Master said, could it be that Master was the Palace Master of Limitless Palace? Yu Linfeng nodded slightly. I have been looking for the next successor of Limitless Palace, but I have not been able to find one. But I am very satisfied with you. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Yu Linfeng in astonishment and said, Master, you are so young. Why are you looking for a successor so early? Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Yu Linfeng could not help but chuckle. I may look young, but I am not young anymore. Chapter 1471. Bailey Hongzhuang noticed Yu Linfeng's joy and carefreeness when he mentioned that he wanted to do something. She understood that this was really what Yu Linfeng was thinking. To Yu Linfeng, no matter if it was identity, strength, or reputation, he already had it all. Now that he could put down all the burdens and live the life he wanted to live, it might not be a bad thing. Master, with my current situation, Bailey Hongzhuang was a little hesitant. She couldn't imagine that such a good thing would fall on her head. All along, she felt that she was too weak to take revenge with her own strength. Even if Di Beichen helped her, it still wouldn't be easy. She understood that Di Beichen wanted to help her, but she couldn't let Di Beichen bear all the risks. How powerful was the Lan family? Even if Tiangang's sect took action, it would only be a confrontation between the two. The final outcome was still unknown. Moreover, there was the existence of the Yu family. If Tiangang's sect failed, then Di Beichen would bear the infamy. She didn't want such a thing to happen. It wasn't difficult for her to build her own force. However, to build a force that could compete with the Lan family, that was too difficult. The top forces in Xingxian continent all had their current foundation after many years of accumulation. It was too difficult for her to complete all of this in a short period of time. If she became the palace master of Limitless Palace, that would naturally be great. However, with Yu Linfeng's wisdom, he naturally saw through Bailey Hongzhuang's thoughts. He immediately smiled and said, Don't worry, do what you want to do. I have always wanted the Lan family to pay the price. Now that you're taking action, it's undoubtedly the best. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was stunned again. She had to admit that Yu Linfeng's words were always out of her expectations. There's no need to rush. Come and see me after the assessment competition is over. Yu Linfeng had a faint smile on his face. He was very satisfied with his disciple. He believed that with Bailey Hongzhuang's ability, as long as she was given more time, her future achievements would definitely be amazing. The Lan clan really knew how to set up opponents. He really wanted to know the expressions on the faces of the Lan family members when they found out that Bailey Hongzhuang, whom they had abandoned back then, had grown to such an astonishing level. I'll meet you after the competition. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Yu Linfeng in astonishment. Yu Linfeng had already fallen. Where could she go to see him? Could it be that Yu Linfeng had left behind a remnant consciousness in Limitless Palace? Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but frown. Before, Yu Linfeng said that he wanted to do something he wanted to do. Putting all these things together, didn't seem right. Your master, I, won't fall so easily. I'll wait for your return in Limitless Palace. Yu Linfeng chuckled. In the next moment, Yu Linfeng's figure turned into nothingness and disappeared in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang stood there blankly. She heard Yu Linfeng's words clearly. If that was the case, Master was still alive in this world and hadn't fallen. Could it be that Master had built such a magnificent historical site in this small world just to find the successor of Limitless Palace? If that was the case, Master's way of thinking was really different from ordinary people. Chapter 1472. It was only when Xiao He and Xiao Bai appeared in front of Bailey Hongzhuang that Bailey Hongzhuang finally regained her senses from her shock. From the beginning to the end, she felt that everything was simply too unbelievable. She simply could not believe that all of this was real. However, the rainbow-colored energy center in her body reminded her that all of this was real. He had acknowledged a master, and a master who was full of arrogance. Her master had given her the rainbow pearl as a greeting gift. She had merely risked her life to climb the 100th step, and in the end, she had become the next palace master of Limitless Palace. She actually had such good luck. After Xiao He emerged from the chaos ring, she immediately jumped onto Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder. Her furry face was filled with concern. Master, how are you? What happened during this period of time? Ever since we entered the chaos ring, it's as if we've been sealed and we haven't been able to get out. Xiao He and Xiao Bai looked worriedly at Bailey Hongzhuang. Their expressions were filled with unconcealable anxiety. During this period of time, they had been anxious to death in the chaos ring. As early as when Bailey Hongzhuang had reached the 98th step, Xiao He and Xiao Bai had entered the chaos ring. Originally, they could still understand their master's situation from the chaos ring. However, ever since their master had risked her life to climb the 99th step and reached the 100th step, they could no longer sense the situation outside. After that, they had been trying to come out but to no avail. They had only succeeded in coming out just now. They did not know what their master had experienced during this period of time. After Xiao He and Xiao Bai had come out, Baisher had also come out from the chaos ring. He looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with concern. Master, are you all right? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the three beasties who had come out, and a faint and gentle smile appeared on her beautiful face. I'm fine. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang was fine, the three beasts were relieved. As long as their master was fine, they were relieved. Previously, when Master climbed up to the 100th floor, he had completely fainted. With such a serious injury, it would be terrible if no one took good care of him. Now, it seemed that the situation was not as bad as they thought. At least their master was fine. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw that Baisher had also come out, she could not help but smile in surprise. Baisher, you've broken through. Baisher happily rubbed against Bailey Hongzhuang's feet, its little face filled with pride. Bailey Hongzhuang picked up Baisher. She found that after this breakthrough, Baisher's figure was a bit bigger than before, and his weight had also increased a lot. This time, Baisher had been in seclusion for a really long time. Previously, she had been very worried that something might have happened during his seclusion. She had been in seclusion for several months but had not succeeded in breaking through. Now that she had sensed it carefully, she could not help but sigh. White Lion's breakthrough speed was really enviable. This was only his second breakthrough, and White Lion had already risen to Yellow Realm level 1. This improvement was simply too shocking. It was no wonder that White Lion had taken so long to break through compared to the previous time. It turned out that his power had increased by so much. It was simply too embarrassing. White Lion is really too abnormal. Xiao He was speechless. In fact, ever since White Lion had broken through, he had been repeating this sentence over and over again. A Beast King's cultivation was truly gifted. This increase in power was simply too shocking. Chapter 1473. Xiao Bai looked at White Lion with a speechless look in her eyes. White Lion's previous breakthrough had already been very shocking. This time, it had soared by leaps and bounds. It was simply too hard to accept. White Lion stared proudly at Xiao He and Xiao Bai. Previously, its powers had been left behind by everyone. Now, it had finally caught up. Previously, Xiao He and Xiao Bai had been very proud in front of it. Now, it could finally hold its head high. Bailey Hongzhuang stroked White Lion's little head. Its increase in power had also exceeded her expectations. The Beast King is indeed a Beast King. White Lion happily leaned into Bailey Hongzhuang's arms. It had been in closed-door cultivation during this period of time. It had missed its master very much. Master, what inheritance did you receive in the end? The three beasts stared curiously at Bailey Hongzhuang. This ruin was so impressive. They were very curious to know what inheritance their master had received. One had to know that the final inheritance was extremely impressive. Looking at the row of three beasts staring at her, the smile on Bailey Hongzhuang's lips deepened, and she immediately told them everything that had happened before. Based on her understanding of these three beasts, if she did not tell them everything clearly, they would definitely pester her relentlessly. In order to avoid trouble, she decided to tell them everything directly. When Bailey Hongzhuang told all this to the three beasties were completely dumbfounded. They looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in disbelief, only wanting to ask one thing, is this true? Bailey Hongzhuang's smile was complicated when she noticed the three beasts' expressions. Forget about the three of you. Even I find it hard to believe. Xiao Bai moved closer to Bailey Hongzhuang. Her little face was filled with confusion as she asked, Master, have you merged with the Rainbow Divine Pearl? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Not bad. Xiao He climbed onto Bailey Hongzhuang's left shoulder and asked, Master, what's different after you fused with the Rainbow God Pearl? Yes, what's the difference? White Lion quickly asked. Previously, when they heard from Di Beichen, they felt that the Rainbow Divine Pearl was an extremely extraordinary existence. They had always hoped that their master would be able to take it back as soon as possible. Who would have thought that master would have already obtained the seven-colored Divine Pearl before the competition had even ended? It was truly shocking. Looking at the curious looks of the three beasts, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. The Yuan Li in her body instantly surged. In the next moment, a rainbow light appeared on Bailey Hongzhuang's palm. The gazes of the three beasts were immediately attracted by the seven-colored light. After feeling the energy of the seven-colored light, the eyes of the three beasts became even brighter. The Yuanli has turned into a rainbow color. How magical! Xiao He exclaimed. It was the first time she had seen such a beautiful Yuanli. Her eyes lit up. Not only has the color become more beautiful, but the power has also become more powerful. Xiao Bai quickly felt the difference in the energy. At the same level of cultivation, Master's battle power would be even more powerful than before. All along, Master's battle power had been much stronger than ordinary cultivators. Now that she had the Rainbow Divine Pearl, her battle power would be even stronger than before. Chapter 1474. The power of the seven-colored sacred pearl was already much stronger than ordinary power, not to mention that after possessing the seven-colored sacred pearl, the cultivation speed would also become faster. In the long run, Lan Qingyan's strength surpassing other cultivators was expected. Now that Master also had the seven-colored sacred pearl, he would definitely catch up with Lan Qingyan. After all, Master was the real owner of the seven-colored sacred pearl. Although it seemed that Lan Qingyan had displayed an astonishing power after obtaining the rainbow pearl, they believed that what was not theirs would not be theirs in the end. Since the seven-colored sacred pearl had appeared in Master's body and not in Lan Qingyan's body, it meant that Master's cultivation talent was stronger than Lan Qingyan's. They believed that Master would definitely defeat Lan Qingyan. Looking at the three beasts' amazed appearance, the smile in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes deepened. This trip to the ruins was really a big opportunity. Outside the ruins. Xia Jiqing and the others had been waiting outside the ruins. It had been 3 months, but Bailey Hongzhuang had not come out yet. Boss has stayed inside for so long and hasn't come out. Could something have happened to him? Xia Jiqing's face could not hide her worry. After all, Boss had already fallen into a coma when he climbed to the 100th floor. Although she had not experienced the pressure of the 99th floor, she could understand it just by looking at the situation of Boss and Mo Yinjue. If Boss had no one to save him after reaching the 100th floor, it would be really dangerous. Boss is blessed, he will definitely be fine. Yuan Xiaoman, on the other hand, was trying to convince herself that 3 months was not a short period of time. At the beginning, they were very indifferent, but as time passed, the worry in their hearts became stronger and stronger. Mo Yinjue's injury had also recovered after a period of recuperation. At this moment, they had all gathered outside the ruins. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.